but we will do it.
That's
They thought it
amazing.
was a real
Oh,
mission
yeah.
call.
Wow.
And you just,
Missionary month.
We just
we need to be
hosted,
careful because we've done this for
we
decades.
host one night where
Jumped on
families
the good
take
ones
in
early,
kids
huh?
in groups, and we did Japan. That's where I was. So I had
This guy.
5 years.
Where's the Mountain
So it
Dew?
does happen.
Oh, okay. I won't go off
Thought
on
we were
you.
making that kind of a.
Hopefully you can tell he's kind of, oh yeah, it's just not every time.
That's right.
But, I mean, I was just so touched that they were going to Seattle, so that was at least,
Well, yeah.
I mean, and they're
Still.
sending their 16-year-old daughter, their, I mean, but they came to talk about it.
That's amazing.
Over the length of the meeting.
We're gonna wait.
Good to see you. Doing all right?
Yeah, you guys, get ready? Geared up?
For this week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pickleball?
Yeah, I've been practicing with my kids. The problem is my kids
I
are
feel so
terrible.
left
So
out.
it's like, I'm gonna get there and remember what it's like to play people who are good.
I can believe you didn't include somebody who's disabled in your group. I feel left out.
Well, usually just add you to our team. We'll go 3.
I heard he didn't have such the running game.
Who does? Yeah. Oh, I know.
I did okay today.
On the other hand,
So,
there'll be
the other day, my grandkids come by. I don't know if I told you this. As long as they get to it. And they stopped in to see me playing pickleball.
on your fence.
And my 7-year-old grandson says,
So you took him to like Canal Building?
no, they stopped in. I was playing and they just came in to see me.
Oh, showed up at Canal Building and you were playing pickleball.
And I came out to greet him. My 7-year-old grandson says, hey, how come you're playing with all those old guys? I mean, I'm the oldest guy there. Is that so you can win?
Oh.
Oh. The 7-year-olds, they're pretty strict.
Mixed in an insult.
Are we recording? All right, we'll get started this evening here. Welcome, everybody, to our city council meeting here on April 15th, 2024. My name is Mayor Carolyn Lundberg, presiding along here with our city council members. Welcome to those here in person and watching online. We always begin first with an invocation, which will be given this evening by Councilmember Steve Stewart, followed by a Pledge of Allegiance that will be led by Elsie Peterson with maybe a little assistance. All right, we'll go to that point.
Our Father in heaven, we thank thee for this beautiful day, for the many blessings that we have, for the opportunity to live in this great city and to serve here and live here. We pray thy blessings upon us tonight during these proceedings, that we'll be inspired to, in counsel and in doing those things that will be most appropriate for the city of Lindon. We ask thy guidance and protection for all who travel this evening and say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I'd like to welcome up Elsie to lead the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay.
Repeat after us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you. I think Elsie might have the record of the youngest pledge leader. Thank you. All right, we'll now have item number 1. There are these are agendas right there at the entrance to the room if you'd like to follow the agenda this evening. Item number 1 is our call to order and our roll call here of those that are present.
Van Broderick present.
Steve Stewart, present.
Carolyn Lundberg, president.
Lincoln Jacobs present.
Jake Hoyt present.
Quorum, so wonderful. And then we will now move on to our presentations and announcements. And we first have a very special employee recognition that we are excited to do this evening. And I'll turn this over to our administrator, Mr. Cowie.
Diane, you get to come up here and stand next to me. Is that all right? You weren't too embarrassed about that, so. We are excited to recognize Diane here tonight. She has been working with us for a long time, I think, probably since the community center, 2011, and helps out as a lunch aide with our seniors, and then also with some of our recreation and parks activities. And we received this really nice comment, actually 2 different comments for Diane. Let me read these. Diane is amazing. She's an amazing employee. She is a person who can do anything at any time. She has really stepped up as another employee underwent surgery and was available at the senior center. I do not know if there's another individual on this earth who is more talented and hardworking than Diane. She takes care of the seniors, builds staircases. We're gonna have to find out about that. Builds staircases, picks up donations, perfectly sews royalty sashes, and always does it with a smile on her face. Diane also makes the centerpieces for the senior lunch tables. They are fun and beautiful and change with each season or holiday. We love Diane's influence and help at the senior center and recreation department. Even though she's only there a couple times a week, she's very deserving of this award. So we wanted to give you those nice comments, and a $50 gift certificate to Home Depot is where you chose, right? All right, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. The centerpieces are so festive and wonderful, and I know everyone really appreciates all you do. We really thank you so much. Well deserved, and make sure you spend that all on yourself. Okay. No. All right. All right, we now have a new swearing in of our new treasurer. We're very thrilled to announce Hayden Peterson will come join the team here. So come on up.
Hayden, you know what? Before, maybe you could just stand really quick and introduce your family that's here with you, Hayden, before you come up.
Yeah, so this is my wife Lisa, our little boy Conrad. He is 4, going to be 5 soon, and then Elsie.
Awesome.
And we have a little boy due on April 9th, or May 9th.
May 9th. I was going to say, poor mom. Yeah. Well, come on up, Hayden, and we're glad that you're here with your family. They traveled from north of Ogden to come down and be with us today, and so he's got quite a commute here for a few weeks till they resettle. So I think we're going to do this right up here, Hayden. So.
Oh, I actually speaking to a mic. All right. Where are you on? Was right here? Sure. Okay. All right. Put your right hand up, please. All right, and just repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Hayden Peterson,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
and I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
Good job. Welcome. Thank you. And then we'll have to sign it tomorrow. Maybe your tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
We're so glad to have you join us, like I said, and if any council members have anything else to add to our Diane tonight, please do so. All right. We so appreciate you. Now we're moving on to some other items of business. You're always welcome to stay. We have apparently a over 400-page document that we're going to be reviewing tonight that's going to be really thrilling if you'd like, but otherwise, if you want to go, you're welcome to go as well. Thank you again. All
Diane,
right.
thank you for everything. Appreciate it.
Okay. Any further comments or announcements from council members? All right, seeing none, we'll go on to item number 3. This is the segment that allows open session for public comment. If there's anyone that would like to address the council on anything that is not on tonight's agenda, this would be the time to let yourself be known and come forward.
Alan, Splash-tacular Part 2, Return of the Splash.
Yes, next year, right? Okay.
I like it.
All right, very good. We'll move now to item number 4, council reports. And either one of you want to start us off tonight?
I'd love to go.
Thank you.
Looking forward to ULCT conference this week for our new council members. This is an awesome opportunity not only to network with other council members, other city employees. I feel like I learned so much, and I can't believe it's our 10th year. And I don't know that I've gone every single year, but every time I learn a lot. And so go with an open mind, a notepad, and excited to see you all down there. Should be a great time. A quick update from our police department. If you'll pull out your calendars, May 14th is our annual award dinner for the police in conjunction with National Police Week. So May 14th at the community center from 6 to 8 p.m. Always a good time, and appreciate the invite. If we can make it, please.
And a
do.
+1 too, correct?
And a +1. Yes. Okay. Officers conducted a distracted driving blitz last Thursday over a 3-hour period. Over those 3 hours, anyone dare to guess how many distracted drivers they pulled over?
What were you talking about?
Distracted drivers. Nailed it. 68 traffic stops.
I was
were
going to
made.
say 68, but that was,
I'd cut you off. 21 citations issued. I appreciate the chief. These are great ideas. Bring awareness. In addition, Chief has an interesting story that you'll have to get with him offline on several unique events. Being a police officer is never a boring job, no doubt. So appreciate all that he is doing, all that the PD is doing. That's all for me.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Hoyt.
North Point Solid Waste, Neil Schwindeman has reached out and wanted to sit down and talk with other city decision makers. I'm going to meet with Adam and Mayor Lundberg tomorrow, and we're going to talk about what that might look like for us. If you're interested to learn more about the dump, please let me know, and we'll make sure you can be a part of that.
Just as long as we don't create a quorum.
Oh,
Yeah, you don't call it a dump either.
transfer station.
There you go.
Nailed it.
Okay.
Thank you for pointing out
I've been corrected.
I also attended did some additional training there, so I'm even more trained on districts and budgeting and open meetings. Parks and Rec, Pleasant Grove Pool is offline. I think Heath sent out emails to everybody. That's gonna certainly impact us. He and Alan and Harley made some recommendations about what we should or shouldn't do relative to the increase that we might experience. I thought it was good. We have a new parks worker, Kenneth Thompson. He has started, and we have a part-time coordinator, Sheen Beard, that verbally accepted last Friday. Soccer has started with over 1,000 children signed up there, so great soccer program going. New Meadow Park playground equipment has been shipped, and that'll get installed as soon as it arrives. I would like to make a staff shout out to Kristen and Adam for awesome budgeting training. It was very, very helpful. I'm still not very smart, but I feel much more educated. I really, really appreciate that. Nicole had some great questions in there as well. Looking forward to the ULCT conference that Jake was talking about. Also, as part of that, the pickleball tournament. I'm not sure what council member pickleball trash talk sounds like, so, but I'm in for it if it's there.
We're excited. You're going to trash talk us, or?
Well, no, the best I could come up with is you guys might win in points, but we will have more fun.
So, Mayor
We'll have more
Lundberg
fun.
is your partner.
Yes, Mayor Lundberg and I versus these two and a bunch of others. We'll see how this
We'll
goes.
meet. I imagine we're on different sides of the bracket, like March Madness, and I
Sure.
imagine we'll both be there at the end because
Final game.
Because we've never done that.
because
before.
we never have before, but this is the year. Looking forward to it.
It will be fun.
We're
Looking
bringing
forward
it. We're bringing it.
to That's it.
Okay, thank you, Lincoln. Councilmember Stewart.
okay. I was going to mention ULCT as well. We attended that training when we were first elected, and it was great, so I'm looking forward to what they have for us there. I'd like to report on this past Wednesday, the 10th of April, PG Lindon Chamber of Commerce hosted a business summit at UVU at the Keller Building there, and it was our chamber's opportunity to host, and it went really well, up to 180 attendees. There were incredible speakers, and kudos to Eric Jensen, who's on the Pleasant Grove City Council, as well as the Chamber President, and Mercedes Call, his executive assistant, who put in so many hours of time and effort on that. But it was really a great event. We were able to attend. And then this last Saturday, Lindon Cares hosted a Lindon Community Family Health Fair. And our youth council was invited to come help put together swag bags and welcome the guests and attendees and to clean up after. And it was kind of one of their last events now that they were able to participate in before their term ends. And they'll be finishing their term with an activity night next Monday, the 22nd. They'll get together and we'll do some laser tag, and I want to see the mayor in action on that one, and a dinner
Fall
at Los
laser tag.
Hermanos.
Great, and yes, the applications are due by tonight on that, correct? So for the next council term for youth. And some of the feedback I got from the health fair was that people found some resources that they had been looking for that were really helpful. It does hit a number of boxes, checking like our Healthy Living Utah award that we got last year from the league. And so Jamie's doing a fantastic job. She's brought in a lot of coalition volunteers, people in the community that are just really pumped and going out and volunteering and bringing a lot of great resources to people in the community. So it was a great event, and people said they really enjoyed it, so appreciate them.
I've seen their signs out and about for that event. How do they feel like they're doing it, reaching out to the community and making people aware of the resources that are there? The resources feel like they're coming together very well. Are
Yeah.
they fairly pleased with that, or?
It's new, so I think a lot of it is, the health fair was the first time, and you build traditions, and then they go from there. And I know all the classes she mentions, like the parenting classes, have a wait list. The teen coping skills classes are really popular, which surprised me when I pop into the teens. I'm thinking, usually you have to drag teens to things like that, but they really like them. I mean, you're all nodding your heads, so.
Yeah, can you hear me? I think she's doing a great job, and the schools help pass the information. She's at Timpanogos High School right now, doing another big meeting with the coalition and the parents, and she's in. So yeah, the word's pretty good, I think, and through the schools and the parents and coalition members. She got 2 new coalition members Saturday, so the word is getting out, I think.
It is, and what's great is there's a few other communities that have, and we kind of piggyback off of each other a lot of times with people that are involved in events and things like that. So there's a
Everything
definite
I've seen has been
momentum.
very good. I'm just hoping people are aware of it because there's such great resources available.
Yeah, they had the yard signs, and I know we had a couple, social media posts that we put out to support that and get the word out. It's the same question. How's the best way to get information out to the residents? As much as you try to disseminate through multiple channels, there's always people that say, wait, what? Right? Didn't hear about it, didn't know about it, but we do the best we can.
I will put maybe Juan on the spot. Anything you want to update us on projects going on right now?
We are gonna start paving, Canal Drive next Monday. That's when Geneva got us on the schedule. Bar something going wrong.
Don't even say it.
Yeah.
Well, hate to say the 22nd, and then it's gonna be the 23rd. The water is gonna be, start coming down. I gave Adam an update. Just got another update just a few hours ago that, they're gonna start bringing in the water on the 22nd instead of the 25th. But then we have a couple days to fill it up, let it settle, and then we'll start charging the system probably on the 25th or 26th. Well number 4 is gonna start being put back together, next Wednesday, this Wednesday. Hopefully we just keep going to put the city back together after a very hard, winter season of construction and many projects.
Thank you for that update. Lots of things going on. A special appreciation to all of our public works for all of the heroic type action that they're doing.
Juan, did our connection into the Murdoch Canal, is that completed?
That is completed physically. We're just waiting for Rocky Mountain Power install the transformer, and then we can power up all the equipment that is inside. And that should be done on the 24th.
That's great.
One more thing. Did you guys see the leak that happened in Highland?
I thought it was Pleasant Grove.
It was in the Highland,
From the Murdoch, right?
the Murdoch, they actually did another connection like we did. I don't know if it happened at the same vault, that they just pretty much copied what we built, put one in Highland, but they had a little mishap and I guess flooded.
Those some basements,
When
right?
you say Highland Meadows or Highland City?
Highland City.
Okay. All right.
So is there then a leak test that we do when water starts going on our system, our connection?
So really, what happens is on the tap, it's just a pipe with a valve, and then we have the vault. And ours, they pressurized, and our valve is holding. I don't know what happened on their side. I haven't reached out to the folks from Rover River Water Users Association.
All right, thank you.
We finish our spring cleanup tomorrow. They're coming to pick up the containers.
So if anyone needs to hear that on the microphone here, the spring cleanup dumpsters will be available through tomorrow.
Will be removed tomorrow.
They're being removed tomorrow, okay.
Available through today.
Through today, okay.
They're picked up in the morning.
Picked up tomorrow, okay. Thank you.
That's all.
All right, very
And-
good. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, and then just last item, I'll be down to league convention as well.
Okay, great. We'll have a lot of things to learn and report back. Administrators report.
Yeah, just an FYI, Cole texted me earlier today, and I don't know if you made this or if you knew the mayor, if you knew Mayor. His grandfather's in the hospital, and they don't expect him to make it through the day, and so he is there with his family, so just an FYI.
Yes, that's important.
Let's see, just a couple items. We've mentioned already a few things on that administrator's report. On April 24th, just a reminder, we have this 8:00 a.m. breakfast with our employees. We're going to take a big group photo and wanted to make sure you're invited to that. And then we're going to put copies of those photos into our time capsule that we'll do later this year. So, and that will be, we're going to meet in the fire station bay and have that breakfast. So, and then on the 25th of April at 3:00, we have this joint Orem and Lindon City Council meeting in the chambers of the Orem Council chambers. A few topics that have been tossed out as possible discussion items. No action taken, but just topics of discussion. Our fire and EMS services, possible education topics with the school district, potential splits there, shared utilities, and then transportation, which I'm assuming transportation was something they sent in an email to us. I'm assuming that might be BRT along State Street. That could be something they want to talk about. So I don't know of other transportation issues that we have to discuss, other than maybe 1600 North and that project, but.
Yeah, we look forward to that. They have several new council members, as do we. And so it's going to be great to kind of talk about some of our shared interlocal issues and get to know one another, so.
I did need to I sent out an email on this earlier today, just a reminder, we've transitioned to lindon.gov now, all of our emails and then our website as well. And so we'll be working over the next several months trying to find everywhere that lindoncity.org is written. So it's officially, that will all forward over, but we'll do that for about another year. And then I do need to just run this past you. This is dealing with the future traffic signal on 200 North State. So just down the hill from us, this location got approved by UDOT. It met warrants for a traffic signal. And they sent this report to us in January where they outlined two options and gave some cost estimates for those options. One is being that they could install a median that would restrict full movement from that intersection. This is the most cost-effective alternative, but as you can see there, it would prohibit left-hand turns coming out of these side streets. The other alternative would be putting in a full traffic signal which would then require, let me zoom this out a little bit. This is a little more expensive. It would require the city to purchase a small amount of right-of-way where these purple lines are. We already own this corner where the park is. We don't know the costs on that yet, but we would expect that's pretty minimal. So our engineers have recommended to UDOT that this would be, our preference would be for a full traffic signal. Is that, I'm looking for general head nods.
Those are two pretty close together signals.
They are, and we had been told by UDOT, you're talking the 400 North signal. Yeah, we had been told by UDOT years ago that they wouldn't approve signals this close until a local senator talked to UDOT, and now that has changed. And so they've said this can be installed, and they have it on their radar to put in soon. So,
Seems like when people have come and talked about it, that's important to them to have a full light there that are coming off of that.
we believe that would be important for the businesses that are located on either side. Yeah.
And you made a comment a year or so ago about if a light goes in there, when that light is red, people are gonna turn right and head through that, I forget what road that is. But I thought you made a comment that it wasn't really ready to take a lot of traffic if that were to happen. Do you know what I'm referring to?
I don't recall that, Lincoln.
So if we do
Are
put
you-
it, that's
You
just
want me
by
to
the
go
park,
to
right?
like a street map? Is that?
So if there's a light there and people are
Oh.
coming down and encounter a stoplight there, they may turn right to
Yes.
try and get a different direction they're going. Are we ready on that street?
On 135.
135.
Do we need to,
You know, I think from my standpoint, I think that would still be an issue for me personally. And we don't have any plans to widen 135. It's got some segments that are in pretty rough shape. It is a roadway that we've identified that can or should be reconstructed within the next few years, but it's not something that we'd be doing immediately. And so, that was my reaction. That's not a traffic analysis,
Right.
but, if people have traditionally come down that hill and would make a right-hand turn onto 400, my assumption is if that light is red, they may turn right sooner.
and it is kind of a rough road. It's,
Yeah.
probably wouldn't.
So, whether or not there's a median there or a signal, I don't know if that changes things dramatically on that issue or topic, but, that was my own insight on that, Lincoln, so.
Worry about the downhill stop. It just seems like that could be problematic, you know, for that to be, I mean, it's mid-hill. I think we already have a lot of, you pick up speed really easily coming off of that if you catch the light. I don't know.
And I think that's the point that those that would like to see a signal, there's 2 event centers there to the west, and we sometimes have large event programming in the park, and now we have all those other businesses there, so it could be a traffic calming measure in essence with the speeds that are picked up, and also make those, coming into those businesses or out of the businesses, I think was the primary concern, exiting the businesses more safe.
I go through that every day, at least once. The idea of another traffic light there, gosh, it's just so close. I understand the safety thing, but you can come out and turn right if you're here on this side of that picture.
It's the left hand, trying to come out left.
Yeah, it would be
Dice.
silly to try to do that ever. Do they just do it, or does the city have to approve it? What's that process like?
They've asked for the city's recommendation. UDOT's preference is the median because it's cheaper. And it actually, in their studies, is safer than a through intersection. It eliminates a turn movement, so you don't have people making left-hand turns. And so it ends up being a safer intersection with a median.
So,
But we're assuming that we would have a lot of concerned businesses if we were to put a
Yeah.
median and prohibit left-hand turns out of those intersections.
I mean, imagine if you're coming northbound and you're trying to get to Premier Family Medical, urgent care, and you can't make a left turn.
Oh, yeah,
Now
that's,
you have to go to Fourth North and try to do a U-turn.
yeah, that
Yeah,
part
you,
is.
you would be able to
Would
on
be able
that, so
to
you would,
because you
if you're
have a
headed
dedicated
northbound, you would
lane.
be able to make
Oh,
a
okay,
left.
so there would be,
Yeah,
it wasn't a
So
full
it's,
divider.
it's leaving the side
It's
streets.
just the left turn exit,
Right.
okay.
And that eliminates the option
I
of
was
a left coming
misinterpreting
out of
that.
it when you're going
Tag
east.
Car wash may have an issue saying, hey, we service a lot of those houses there, they're not gonna be able to come out, turn left into, or am I seeing, I'm
Yeah,
seeing
you're
that right?
right.
They could
Yeah.
not turn left. There would no longer be a left-hand turn for them to go to Swig or to Tag Car Wash.
The 400 north connection to 400 west would make another option to
Yeah,
access
when that
that part, but
happens.
that's not pretty close.
You know, and anyone coming to Swig from Orem would have to go around or flip a U-turn to go back to Orem.
And everybody in those businesses can't travel north. They've got to go
Right.
south,
Yeah,
flip a
any
U,
thoughts on
and
that?
then go north.
We've got all of our public safety here, people,
Yeah.
so.
I'd love to hear
You guys
from
have
them.
any comments on that?
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, Adam, that we could try to do some research into our database, go back maybe even 5 years to determine the number of accidents, the nature of accidents. We could pull out a spill that would help at least you guys make the best decision for
Yeah, they've actually,
perspective.
they've got the traffic crash counts actually as part of their study, if I can find that.
But it brings up a good point, when the Fourth North connects to Lakeview, if and when that intersection could serve, yeah.
The only thing that we'd recommend is that we can drive over that median. So it's gotta be constructed in a way
Oh,
that fire can cross it or an ambulance can cross it.
good point.
Or we go left to center, I mean, they build them so that you can do that, but if we can do it, then so can the general public normally, so we just go left to center, put lights to center, and just, take the right of way, request the right of way, do it safely. So we would support whatever decision you guys made.
Okay.
How quickly do they want input? I mean, we'd talked about it, but we hadn't seen these options. Is that something you can send to us? And
Yeah, I can. We had actually sent notice to them this last week, assuming that it would be a signal, and so that's the only thing that we had ever discussed as a council and city in prior circumstances, and so, but we can put the brakes on that if you want to evaluate this some more.
When you say expense, at whose expense? Will there be, where's the funding? Is this
For these
just-
traffic signals, this is a state corridor, and so this would be, the signal itself is paid for by UDOT typically on state highways, but any right-of-way acquisition on the corners is usually up to the jurisdiction. And
Okay,
so,
and some of our RDA funds could be used for the acquisition.
could be, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm happy to send this to you guys, and then if you have any feedback on that, let me know.
yeah, we didn't think there was any chance in heck this would ever happen.
Yeah, we were in that boat just a couple years ago, so.
So when
Okay.
when they say it's been approved, what's the timeliness of that then?
I don't know the exact answer to that.
Do we have a
Within the
not
next,
exact
within
or
the next
rough?
year or so,
Okay.
is what I would assume. Because they're
Approved or
asking,
met warrants? And I don't know if there's a difference.
what's that?
Approved or has met the warrants?
It met warrants for a traffic signal.
And then that goes through an engineering process
Yeah,
typically.
so once it meets warrants, then my understanding essentially it goes on a list and it's prioritized and based on funding and need. For instance, on the 700 North and Anderson Boulevard intersection, that met warrants probably 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And they're just now finalizing design. We're meeting with them tomorrow, actually, to talk about a final design on that, so. This one is moving faster than anticipated, and I think there's some legislative reasons behind that, so.
Do they do programming to coordinate the lights for the flow? And if so, can there be a request that because those two lights are so close together, I don't know what they
They
typically
do.
do on that, to not get you to stop and then stop.
Yeah, they actually do program all those signals together, and so in theory, if you're traveling the speed limit, you should be able to go multiple blocks without being stopped, but that's what I've understood, so.
All right. Anything else on the administrative?
No, I'll email
report?
that out to you, so thanks, that's all I have.
All right, and then just one other quick reminder, the Little Miss, the Rodeo Royalty will be having their rodeo competition for the next royalty group on May 4th, and applications are due to Shawnee Rasmussen, I believe, April 27th this month, so. And you do have to have your own horse. So, can't show up and borrow a horse. Okay. All right, so moving on then, we have our minutes from April 1st. If council's had a moment to review those, any additions or changes?
It truly was fun to read your presentation again.
All righty.
Her April Fool's presentation. I have no corrections.
Other than maybe we need to have a little asterisk, this is an April Fool's proclamation, maybe added to the minutes?
It's in there.
Please do.
It is in there.
All right, thank you.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes of April 1st, 2024.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Broderick, seconded by Councilmember Stewart. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, our minutes are approved. All right, then moving on to item number 7 on the agenda. This is our consent agenda items, somewhat housekeeping in nature. They do not require public comment, and we do have a resolution here this evening.
So this is a resolution approving specific individuals at the city to enable us to access the PTIF account, which is the Public Treasurer's Investment Fund, where we utilize state, basically essentially a state investment fund. They invest our monies and get good rates of return on that. And it's very liquid. We can access it very easily. And so this adds our new treasurer that just got sworn in tonight, and then Brittany and myself are also on that list. And so it's separating some duties from our finance individuals so they can't access those funds directly.
Yeah, what is the process to send funds in and to pull funds out? Does it take 2 people? Does any one of these individuals can do it?
So any of these 3 individuals have rights to access through a login. They're given permissions, and we send in information on them, and so it's a login and password.
So only money can go from the city to that fund, and it only can come from that fund back to the city?
Goes from the state fund into our bank account. Yeah, we can do interfund transfers between those in the state fund.
How often are we using this now in a year? Once, twice, 30 times?
Oh, weekly. Yeah.
Puts a few more eyes into the process. And I think probably the auditors, I would imagine, see this as a good lever of transparency, and also just fail-safe, that it's not too limited to just a few.
Yeah, I'm curious what, you're just curious?
Yeah, just curious.
Okay.
To know how often how much interest do we get on this in a year, and
You know that offhand? Tens of thousands, easily hundreds of thousands. Yeah, it's a lot.
So is this new, or is this just
No,
changing
this
now
is just
because we have our
changing.
new treasurer?
no, and I was just trying to get some new information.
Yeah,
to
so our prior
verify.
treasurer was on this, and the state requires this resolution has to be approved so that they can verify that you as elected officials have authorized these persons to access these funds.
I'm comfortable with it. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda item as presented.
I second.
By Councilmember Hoyt, seconded by Councilmember Jacobs. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that approves Resolution 2024-10-R. Item number 7. Moving forward now to agenda item number 8. This is the Orem Fire Department's contract services presentation. Welcome very much. All those that are here in attendance.
Lundberg,
Chief.
council members. Adam, thanks for having us tonight. We'll click it. Perfect. I brought with me members of our command staff, Assistant Chief Sean Hurst. I have to excuse Assistant Chief Myers, the passing of his father a couple weeks ago. He's spending some much-needed time at home with his family, and we're hopefully expecting him back tomorrow, actually. So I brought the 3 division chiefs with us, Ben Williams, Derek Spencer, and Seth Swenson, and you'll hear from those guys tonight. But this is an awesome opportunity for us to just look back at the current contract services, the partnership since 2008. It's been strong, it's been beneficial, mutually beneficial to all 3 communities, Orem, Lindon, and Vineyard, as well as, I would say, Pleasant Grove, who receives benefits because of the services that you currently provide to the members of your community through Orem Fire. They respond into Pleasant Grove on a regular basis to back up their services as needed. In the past 2 years, one of the things that I think that has strengthened our partnership is recognizing Lindon and Vineyard in our current logo. We've changed our uniforms, we've changed the graphics on our apparatus across the whole fleet that represent the partnership that we currently have. In the upcoming slides, we're going to show you some staffing slides. It's very important that you understand that what's being presented is only a proposal. There's talk, we've been negotiating with Adam and sitting down with Adam, talking about a 6th person staffed at the station. Last year, you increased your level of service from 4 to 5. Our push is to go to 6. But we'll be able to talk through that level of service and expect that. But when you see it on the slide, I just want you to recognize that we're still in the primary discussions of level of service, and I think after tonight, you'll recognize the benefits that that could provide if you chose. There's no question that we deliver a higher level of service than any fire department in the state of Utah, which we'll recognize tonight with the differences in variances and just our operational styles. The way we fight fire and the way we provide medical services is different than every department within the state. And then we're going to scratch the surface of what's led to all of these changes over the last 4 years since I've been the fire chief. Is when I took the job, Orem was just undergoing a third-party independent study through Citygate that was just going from start to finish through all the levels of services and evaluating them with the intent of providing feedback nationwide to really put us ahead of the market in generating the services we provide. And so a lot of the things that have been incorporated have come completely from this study, and Chief Hurst will be the one that walks you through that. It's 2 years ago. All right.
I think can you just roll it? There you go.
2 years ago, when Mayor Young and we had a couple council member changes, in every discussion or every meeting that he has, his whole goal and his challenge for us is to be the very best department in the state. And we've taken that very seriously with our operations in both fire and EMS and personnel. We currently are in the top pay scale across the state when it comes to our personnel. We're currently recruiting 15, 16, 20-year members from multiple departments across the state. We just pulled a kid, actually an 18-year battalion chief out of Rock Springs to come and work with us just based off of the way we're providing the services and the interest in how we do what we're doing. And so this is really our driving force, is to assure that when we talk, you'll see training facility, fire operations, medical operations. It's really this ultimate goal of being the best and providing the very best service, which includes to the residents of Lindon. Throughout this presentation, as we roll through these slides, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to stop us and let's answer them as we go. And then, of course, at the end, you guys can feel free to ask anything you have for us. And so with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Chief Hurst and then just move forward.
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, like Chief stated, in 2019, we were kind of a broken fire department, to be honest with you. The city looked at our us and our police department decided, let's bring somebody in and let's take a comprehensive evaluation of these two organizations. What they evaluated were our response times, our staffing, our dispatching processes, our training, station locations, our administrative structure. The study took over a year to complete from the onset. And they found a number of things throughout our organization that we thought we could focus on, and they gave us some recommendations. And here we are, I mean, we're 5 years from when we first started the study, about 3.5 years from when the study was completed. And we started ticking away at those recommendations. Some of those recommendations are reevaluating our station locations, which is what we're doing currently with Station 1 in Orem. We're looking at moving that. Dispatching improvements. Our dispatching has moved to Provo, as well as some massive hardware and process improvements that have helped bring down our response times. Clerical staff. We had very minimal staff in our admin at that time, so we've addressed that. We had very few chief officers at the time. We didn't have a training officer. We didn't have a training facility. We still don't have a training facility. These are a lot of these things that this outside party said we got to start ticking away at. And so over the last few years, and we still are underway on this, and we really think we're moving toward that goal of being the best department in the state. I'm going to bring up our command structure. This is our second iteration of our command structure that we've gone through since that study. Initially, we separated it with police and fire for a number of years, and ultimately we found that we still had some blind spots with that. So last year, we separated operations and administration and then brought on division chiefs to have emphasis in certain areas within our department, specifically fire, EMS, and fire prevention. Fire prevention was one of our big blind spots. We had been very reactive in fire prevention for a number of years within our organization. And so over the last year, we've really broadened our footprint in that. And these gentlemen behind me are going to cover all of that within their slides. Any questions you have for Chief and I before we step down and let the division chiefs cover their areas of expertise?
You had mentioned increase in response times. Do you have data that in 2019 it was X and today it's Y?
Yeah, we can share that with you. It was with the road system in Orem and Lindon. I don't know that we can get to the national standard that they're recommending, but we were 3 minutes over the national average. And so our average dispatch time was exceeding 2 minutes, and that's 90 minutes. Our turnout times, which is from the time our alarm goes off in our station, we like them to get out the door in 90 seconds, and we were exceeding that. And now we can say we're hitting both of those national averages. And so that's why we're moving on to some of these bigger pieces of the pie right now.
In our last presentation, we were talking with our own mayor and council. When the cities were laid out, when the fire Station 1, 2, and 3 in Orem were laid out, it wasn't given, they weren't taking into consideration the population, build out, and then for sure the traffic patterns. So if we didn't have the traffic volume, meeting the times that are nationally standard wouldn't be an issue. I mean, we'd probably have to have 4 or 5 additional fire stations within Orem's geographical jurisdiction just to meet those. However, that's the changes, and that's what we're looking at with relocating Station 1, and then a talk of in the next, well, we're trying to come up with the property right now to do a simultaneous Station 6 on East Center Street. So we have Station 2 on 800 North, we'll have the South Station, but we have this pie off of Center Street wedge that's east to center that doesn't have the coverage or the response, and so looking at negotiating some deal on some property that would help Orem service that area better. So lots of things in the works. And we're just gonna step back. We're gonna let Division Chief Williams and Swenson provide you these operational things. And of course, we're in the room so we can answer questions that they can't. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. So I'm Seth Swenson. I'm our Division Chief over Fire Operations, and this is Ben Williams, and he's over the EMS side. But as you might imagine, we respond to both fire calls and medical calls. So when it comes to decision-making or best practices, whether it's staffing or apparatus or that type of stuff, we make a lot of decisions, or at least put our heads together and present things to chief together. So the things that we'll share, as much as I think a lot of times you think of a fire department, and sometimes, at least citizens a lot of times forget the EMS side of things, and there's massive value, in fact, equal value really in both. And so I'll discuss fire operations, and then Chief Williams will discuss EMS operations side of things. So anyway, if let's see here if I can figure this out. What's that?
Roll it.
Roll, yeah. Okay. Did I go too? I went too far. There we go. All right. So within our fire services right now, with the stations that we have, common terminology would be first alarm, second alarm. You may have heard that type of terminology, and that just means when there's a fire or similar fire emergency, how many apparatus, how many units, how many stations end up responding. And so Orem Fire Department with Lindon and Vineyard, for any first alarm, which would be any fire at all, really, they'll be dispatching 3 engines and 2 trucks. Both serve different functions on a fire ground, and we can discuss that a little bit as well. What we're looking at doing is that staffing there with Station 31, 32, 33, and 34 is having 6 personnel at Station 31, which is on an engine, with an ambulance and a squad, but they would respond as an engine company together with 6 personnel. And then Station 2, a tiller, which is that vehicle there in the picture in the back, with an ambulance and the battalion chief out of that station also with 7. And then Station 33 is Truck 33, which is a ladder truck like the one pictured, but a little bit different. And then an ambulance and engine with staffed with 3 members. And then 34, which is here in Lindon, an engine with 4 and an ambulance with 2, having also 6 members responding as an engine company. Ultimately, I think the reason why I want to share that part is because it matters. What Chief Sanderson mentioned is the request last year to move from 4 personnel on an engine to 5 personnel, which is what's happened here in Lindon. And our goal is to actually staff it with 6. And from a fire standpoint, there's a big difference, and from an EMS standpoint, there's a big difference, which he'll cover again in a second. But from fire operations, what it means is we can effectively perform 2 operations when an engine is staffed with 6 members. If they're staffed with 4 or 5, we can only accomplish 1 operation.
Would you give an example of that?
I would, yeah, that's great, yes. I guess my question, if it's okay if I ask a question, if you have a fire in your home, what are some of the things you would expect to happen, or some of the more critical things that you might expect to happen if the fire, or when the fire department responds?
Determine if anybody's in the building.
Okay, perfect. And if there is, or they're unsure, get them out.
Get them out.
Okay, good. Yeah, that would be a really important one. What's another one?
Put the
Thanks,
yeah.
Chief. No, it's all good.
It was too simple.
That's okay. So that's 2, right? And there's other things that we perform on the fire ground. But at the end of the day, as most citizens would expect, that's actually what we expect. And that's our goal, is to save lives and get people out if they're inside and put the fire out. So operationally, an engine that responds from Lindon, if they're staffed with 4 members or 5 members, they will effectively be able to either perform search and rescue or fire attack. But they wouldn't be able to perform both because the staffing of the operation doesn't allow for that. 6 members allows for fire attack to be performed properly and also be able to have members perform search at the same time. And ultimately, statistically, okay, I'd welcome you at any point to go look at Firefighter Rescue Survey. It's a group that has gone through and for the last 15 years looked at fire rescues and taken statistical information from reports from fires and determined that that the survivability of a person that's rescued from a fire is
if search and fire attack are performed simultaneously, okay, versus fire attack happening and then search happening, is a difference of 25% survivability. So it goes down by 1/4%, if
Do you do
they
it
aren't done
do you do it in that
separate.
order? Fire suppression, or do you do search and rescue first?
It will actually depend on circumstances, conditions, and knowledge of what we know. If you say, hey, so-and-so's in that back corner right there, and we are able to go and perform search in that moment, we will hold off on fire attack in order to go perform that search, knowing that that is an immediate, direct, targeted search is what we would call it, knowing that the next engine coming would be able to perform that function. But imagine if, that's if we have 5 or 4 personnel. If we have 6, it's simultaneous, so it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter whether one's more important or whatever we determine that way. Search will be happening and fire attack will be happening. So when I say that, yes, there are priorities, there are circumstances that depend on training, experience, and overall, ultimately, our operational manuals that we have, which I'll discuss in a second, but so our goal is that we can do both, no matter what.
So you're telling me with 5, you can do one thing,
Yes.
either extinguish or search?
Yes.
With 6, you can do both.
Yeah, exactly right.
Is
So-
that because you have to have 3 deep for each activity?
Is it a risk factor?
So
I
it's
guess?
actually, yeah, it's both. It's really both.
Okay.
So 2 players, 2 personnel, firefighters. I know, I am a soccer coach as well. So two firefighters can perform search together, not one though, but 2 can perform search. 1 stays with the engine to pump the engine, and the other 3 then would actually perform the fire attack with the hose line. So we with our operation, three firefighters with the hose, 2 performing the search, and then 1 stays at the engine in order to operate the pump for the firefighters that are on the hose. If we didn't have that, then we wouldn't be able to send the 1 firefighter on search by themselves. But we could then go search, but then we wouldn't have enough to perform the fire attack that we would need on the hose line. So, does that make sense?
The hose
breakdown?
requires 3 staff.
That's correct. Yeah. So, we make do with what we have. We also know other stations are coming, but ultimately, within that firefighter rescue survey that I spoke about, statistically, as you might imagine, the longer it takes to perform functions, the less likelihood they are of surviving. The longer it takes to put the fire out, which causes more property damage. It's also something we take into consideration. Life above all else, but ultimately we would like to preserve property as well. So any delay in either of those obviously is not a goal for anybody, certainly not the homeowner or the family member, and definitely not for us either. So our goal would be and is ultimately, as we show here, not just in Lindon, but our other stations. I can't get it to work again because that's me, just a firefighter. Yeah, well, either way, we've sort of been through this with even within our own stations, 4 members, 5 members, and ultimately, as we've progressed and grown and learned, Chief Sanderson is supporting us having 6 members at our other stations as well on our engines because of the value that it offers to the citizens ultimately. So, so that's where you can see there then the 1 task with more risk to your point. Still only 1 task at 5, a little bit less risk, but ultimately 2 tasks effectively with having the 6 staff. I mentioned manuals. The reason we operate the way that we do, and to be fair, the reason why we operate, Chief Sanderson mentioned that we operate a little bit different, or he at least mentioned that we're the best at our operation within the state, and I have to 100% agree. The way we operate is written down in our truck operations manual and our engine operation manual, which we did not write up on our own. We did compile to fit our best practices and what fits within our stations, within our response areas, within all of our needs. These are departments that we've taken courses from, that we've brought in to teach us, that we've seen their operations manuals, and been able to compile what best practices are across the nation. And there's many, many more of those. What you won't see is another Utah department listed there. And the only reason is because there isn't an operations manual in another department in the state. And that doesn't make them bad or worse or anything like that. It's just not available. And if you speak with a lot of other departments, they have SOPs or SOGs, and they have ideas of what things look like when they respond. But it's not as detailed nor specific as what we're operating with. And I'm proud to say that we've been able to put together some things that are nationally recognized and organized in such a manner that we can perform effectively and efficiently. So that's with our staffing model and our goal of having 6 personnel on our fire engines and at our stations where we have engines based out of. I just wanted to know if you guys had any questions on that before I move forward with the training center. Okay. So along with the study that Chief Hurst mentioned, we are building a training facility. We've looked at options across the state, and we've had to utilize other state facilities because we haven't had our own ever before. Sometimes we're able to acquire a structure, for example, the 1600 North project, right? There's houses there sometimes that we're able to get into and utilize for a week or two, which is nice because it creates that realistic environment. Because otherwise, some of the state facilities, you can see that white trailer there. That's actually from the Utah Fire and Rescue Academy, the state facility. And I'll just sort of say it this way. I don't know where any of you live, nor have I ever seen your houses, but I know it doesn't look like that. And then if you look at the one on the right upper corner, that's actually Provost's training facility, and I don't believe that looks like any of your houses. If it does, interesting. And then on the lower left, those two pictures together are actually Lehigh's training facility. It's attached to their station, and it's really just a sort of a bigger stairwell. You can see that there. And then American Fork has those red boxes there on the bottom right, which are just some train cars, or we call them Connex boxes, that are stacked on top of each other, and they utilize them to try to mimic at least a facility where they can try to get inside and train. But none of them look like my house, nor do I believe they probably look like your house. So what we've had is, that's a house on 1600 North, actually, that upper left-hand corner that we were able to use for about a week and a half before it was torn down, and haven't been able to get into one until recently, and that was 3 years ago. So there's these really big breakup times of when we're able to be there. The one next to that is a parking lot at one of our parks, and we take some wood and try to make hallways because we try to do the best that we can. We actually have specific training hours every day. So one station has 2 hours on a day, and then another station has 2 hours that day. The very next day, 2 hours and 2 hours. And we have basically 4 hours total of training every day, and we're out utilizing parking lots and whatever else we can try to get our hands on, which is awesome because our guys want it. We need to be that way. I hope you would expect us to be wanting to do that so that we're as prepared as possible when the time comes. Unfortunately, we don't actually have a place as realistic as we really need. And so part of the goal with our training facility is just that, is creating a facility that allows us to train in as realistic environments as possible. So as you can see here, it's going to involve a classroom facility, which has a classroom where we can instruct with a couple offices and bathrooms, and then bays attached to it where we would keep our backup apparatus for training. It does include an EMS room. We will have wildland training down there. And it's actually will be a regional training facility. Just on Saturday, we hosted our first ever national training. We had firefighters from San Diego, from Idaho, Colorado, and a lot in Utah, where we brought in national trainers from Wisconsin, Michigan, and Oklahoma City to teach firefighters here in the West, in the Western region. So we'll be utilizing it for things like that as well. I dare say, not that it looks like your house exactly, but that center picture, it resembles a home. in a way that it has 4 bedrooms upstairs and 5 rooms downstairs. We would be able to burn in all 9 of those rooms. We can perform ventilation operations on the roof to simulate our operations that we would perform on any fire. We'd be able to have perform search, fire attack, and every function that we might want to perform on any fire ever. Forcible entry, the doors are forcible entry doors. That's our residential one. The one to the right is our high density housing. So the 4-story section with that exterior stairwell mimics hotel, mimics apartment complexes. From the interior, there's an interior stairwell which mimics townhomes. That next section where that 2-story section is, from the exterior, you can see that walkway there, which will mimic a garden-style apartment, and from the interior, it mimics a center hallway, apartments or hotels. So that allows us to perform fire training in 99% of what we would go on a fire on, and that actually has 10 burn rooms in there, so we have 19 different burn rooms that we're able to perform training on, and it's been accepted, and not only accepted, but been I guess you could say bought off. I don't know if that's the right word, but with Orem's mayor and city council, and the project is what it is so that it can last. The goal is 50 years. We actually were able to tour some of those similar facilities in the Denver area just a couple months ago to take a look at it, and some of them are over 20 years old and in fantastic shape and still operating the way that anybody would want to operate and utilize. So the value for us long term is just massive. And the ability to train in realistic environments that we would need to go in for ourselves, great. But even more so for the citizens and people is just huge for us to be able to be as prepared as possible so that when the time comes, we're able to function the way we would want to function. Any questions on that facility there? Or anything else? Yes, please.
Thank you so much. So the training facility figure of $8 million, and then you have some other figures in those other areas of those
Yes.
buildings. Is $8 million encompassing everything, or are these additional costs for those?
So the
other
8 million
structures?
would include the infrastructure within the facility. So that's the structures themselves.
Broken out within the 8 million?
That is
Okay,
right.
'cause I was
That's
seeing the
correct.
math didn't
I'm
add
sorry.
up.
No. So
Okay.
then that total there is 4.6, just over 4.6, and then the infrastructure is 3.3.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Thanks. I could have done better there, obviously. So.
So if I understand correctly, where you currently train right now, you feel the facilities are not to the same level of training opportunity that you would create? Because obviously you've trained somewhere
Yes.
currently, and your current training opportunities are missing or lacking certain features?
Yeah, so that's, right now, we don't own a place to train. So occasionally, we're able to talk with the other departments and say, hey, can we come and train in your place? Because even though it doesn't really actually mimic real life, it's still better than the parking lot that we might go into.
But there are other agencies or entities that you can use their
Occasionally,
locations.
it makes it a little bit tricky. And the only times we've ever been able to is when we hired new hires and say, hey, for our final day, could we maybe come? So like once a year, we are able to get in there, but to be fair, they're utilizing it quite often. And so to schedule with them is not, I mean, for our daily training that we really need to be doing, it's not really an option at all to participate like that.
How often do you have a facility that a real facility that's gonna be set for demolition? You mentioned, is that very often?
It's not. It sort of comes in waves. I think, in speaking with UDOT, there's maybe 2 or 3 houses we might be able to get over the next 2 months on 1600 North that we'll be able to have for just a few days before they end up demoing them. But then, what were you gonna say?
Oh, and yeah, the houses do come. There's some limited challenges with those as well, because if we are gonna actually burn it, there's quite a few rules that have to be done. asbestos removed, quite a bit of expense. The contractors often don't want to wait for us to go through all that. So a lot of the homes, they're great for the searching. We can put the concert smoke into them, and they're awesome, but they don't get that live fire. Those are fewer and farther between. That's all I was going to say, is just because the rules to actually burn a house to the ground nowadays with all the different things is difficult.
And Chief Sanderson, you raised your hand.
I was just going to share that realistically, taking which one of our stations out of service to take to American Fork or down to the Provo Airport to actually train removes that 911 resource, at least from our own community, where at least if we had a facility to train like this, we're within Orem's limits, Orem city limits. So if we took the Lindon station down to train, we could bump up Station 2 to cover Lindon and just rotate, so we have better coverage throughout the 3 cities we serve.
Just a quick question on the training. When you talk about where you want 4 hours a day,
Yeah.
is that new training or is that practice of existing procedures and techniques and operations?
Most often, it's repeated training, but certainly as we go out, and we won't stop just because we have our operations manuals and we've been able to acquire so much information from other places, that doesn't stop either. And so we'll continue to improve our operations as they stand now. So there will be some new things, but it is that repeated training. But it's not necessarily the same thing every day either. There are many functions that happen on a fire ground, and we wouldn't even focus if you did each one of those every shift. I guess it would take you 30 shifts to be able to even go through those, right? So the repetition that's needed that we just frankly aren't able to perform right now because we don't have a place to perform many of those. So yes, repeated, but still needing, I guess, of the repetition.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
And Chief Williams, you're
Yeah.
next.
Thank you. My name's Ben Williams. I'm actually been with the Orem Fire Department 20 years. Grew up in Orem, and then in 2015 got assigned to the Grandma's House, we called it, and just fell in love with Lindon. Our family moved to Lindon just shortly thereafter. We've been here for 8 years, and actually know Lincoln from Trek. I was over the EMS, and
It was fun.
he was over everything else. Lincoln did all the logistics, so you can imagine it was amazing, right? But yeah, so it's my opportunity just to kind of share some of the things we're doing with EMS operations. On that same note that Chief Swenson's talking about, just to provide a higher level of service. I got to do that here now on my phone, sorry. For example, EMS is a major part of what we do. I mean, we're fire departments, we're firefighters, that's how we introduce ourselves, but we're paramedics, we're EMTs, we meet community needs through the EMS side about 78% of the time. That's the lights and sirens you hear daily is usually an EMS response, just a higher need, and it's a more often request of our services. So in our department, Orem years ago established a need to have a higher level of care, and really in the late 70s got paramedics a little bit ahead of when others were, and just kind of continued that to the point where we're about 90 personnel in a department, including administrative and some secretary and assistants, and of those 70, almost 70 are paramedic level certified. We have 8 advanced EMTs and 4 EMTs. And we are, of those, we're putting 2 to 3 paramedic EMTs or AMTs through paramedic school as well throughout each year, and growing our paramedic need, which is wonderful. And then we have 9, included in that 69 total, 9 critical care paramedics, which is a higher level of service we provide, which I'll talk about in the coming slides. And we have also certified another 9 people that can backfill them. So 18 people are of the critical care level, just to kind of show that we're trying to provide a more advanced care. We've even recently been able to lateral quite a few paramedics. There's actually, you've heard of probably nursing shortages. There's a paramedic shortage. One of my part-time jobs is helping instruct at the paramedic program down at Utah Valley University. I've done that since 2010, and we just run 2 cohorts a year that put out 24 paramedics, or 48, a year, and just meeting the challenges. They've recently, 2 years ago, started doing 3 cohorts a year and are still coming up short. And so that's why, our goal probably even years ago would have been to always just hire paramedics, but at some point that wasn't practical or possible. We can hire a lot of wonderful and high-quality individual EMTs or AMTs, and they provide a great service, and then eventually, if they're interested, can come to through paramedic school and become paramedics. So we've been able to lateral recently, you know, as Chief Sanderson mentioned, several over the last few years these are people with, 10 to 15 years experience, even up to 19. And often when they're coming to be a part of this, because they know this is a big deal and this is what we do. I always kind of tease the guys, if you don't like being a EMT or paramedic, maybe the fire service isn't for you, because it's what we really do. And I think guys that come and become firefighters really enjoy the EMS side of it as well. One too many. The 5 versus 6 response model per station actually tremendously benefits the EMT and the EMS side of things as well. More hands on scene makes a huge difference in patient care. It's a huge benefit to both the patient and the providers. ALS engines is what we would have here in Orem, what we do have. In fact, all of our captains currently and all of our engineers are paramedics, which allows them to provide that ALS level engine. People ask me all the time, why do we roll a fire engine with every ambulance? And it's because we need the hands, right? Even if we turn them around later, but it's rare, right? Most patients need to be transported out of the house, so you just need the additional manpower to carry. By having 6 versus 4 or 5, you have the ability twofold, is more people on scene for the critical call, to carry in the equipment to actually carry the patient out versus drag them, to do it safely and reduce risk of injury to the firefighter and to the patient. And then, of course, it allows a lot of our critical calls. All our ambulances are staffed with 2 individuals, and anything critical requires both paramedics or a critical care paramedic and a paramedic, up to 3 sometimes in the back of the ambulance. Historically, when that call has happened, which is what does happen quite often, the engine goes out of service while the captain jumps either to drive the ambulance, or if his medical skills are needed, to be in the back of the ambulance and go to the hospital. And the engine then either follows down to the hospital to get back in service, or remains out of service until the ambulance can return to the station and put all things back together. Having a staffing model of 6 allows for a 4-man engine to then kick a guy loose, or even 2 guys loose, to help with that medical call, and that engine can stay in service, responding to the next medical or even fire call and adapting to the current need. We obviously have to respond to real-time situations. We're not available, all of us, at all times for every call, so we adjust as needed. And when Lindon's on a call, we're backfilled with Orem. But by having an engine that can stay in service longer, we can get that ALS engine on scene quicker to begin patient care while an ambulance responds from another station.
Do we have any data that shows how often that happens, that you've got one that goes offline?
Yeah.
Because it's...
Yeah, I don't have that prepared for you, but that is part of our City Gate study. I'm not sure if that's something either of you would know off the top of your heads.
I don't know off the top of our head, but we can definitely provide that.
So I just observed yesterday a repeated EMS call of one of my neighbors, and it looks like we always have our PD report to those as well. And it looks like they're kind of helping and engaging with the resident and as well. Tell me a little bit about that interaction and that how you help one another in that area.
Oh, yeah, we have a wonderful relationship with both Orem police officers and Lindon with Chief Brower. They're great. They come pre-COVID, they were coming every medical, even some of the less. Post-COVID, and I'm not sure necessarily in Lindon, but I'm speaking as a whole, they'll come on anything that, of course, has a scene, a safety issue, or potential based on the description of the call. But then they often just show up and can really be additional hands if needed to deal with, I always say, family members on some of our bigger calls are additional patients, because they're concerned and worried, and sometimes they're interfering, or don't meaning to interfere, right? But they are, or a neighbor, a well-intended neighbor is always coming over. And so then we would use the police officers there to help us and assist us. And they do a great job on our full arrests, doing CPR. In fact, that little slide there that shows the American Heart Association, since really every 5 years reviews their data and what they're doing. And really in the last 20 years, every update is just strictly focused on the on the EMT, the compression side of things, the very basic stuff. And they're saying the quicker we do CPR, the more likely the patient will survive. So I tell our paramedic students all the time, a paramedic doesn't save the life. They're part of the chain of survival. They'll show up, but if no one chose to do CPR until that ambulance got there, their likelihood of surviving would be tremendously reduced. So if a family member is willing to do it, so we treat CPR and try to get family members to actually do CPR, that's great. But an officer, we're finding, gets on scene even quicker. They're just ready, they're mobile, they're in their car, and they can get to scene. And if they're willing to do CPR, it makes a huge difference. And the Lindon officers, as well as the Orem officers, are amazing at doing CPR. We do CPR up to dates with them and just make sure. So yeah, it's been a wonderful relationship. Did that answer your question?
Thank you.
And then the six-man team, and this slide here, which talks about we call it PIC crew CPR, but key roles. And the more people you have on scene, the better you are at improving survivability with that patient by having a dedicated airway person, 2 people rotating compressions every 2 minutes, someone doing medications, the alarm, someone dealing with family, and someone just managing the thing all together. It's a tremendous benefit. So I talked about our critical care squad. I don't know. This squad, LA Squad 51, I don't know if any of you remember that or watched the streaming. I guess the firefighter in me likes these old shows. I hope I know I look older than that, but I wasn't around for that show when it was aired in live, but I've seen it. It was the Chicago fire of the 70s. And they basically, the California squad model, which they still use, but it was when paramedics were first coming around, a higher level of care. Well, we can't put paramedics on every ambulance. Let's put them on a truck and get them there quicker, and then they can join the EMTs and help. And that model has largely existed outside the state, but paramedics slowly over the last 20 years have really come around. Every agency, even in Utah County, for the most part, at least from Provo North, as paramedic agencies, and many south of Provo as well. One thing we've done with it is done an Orem Fire Department critical care squad. So the same concept that what they tried in the 70s with the paramedic is let's have a higher or more advanced level of care and get them to the call quicker to support now our paramedics. So since 2021 till now, almost 3 years, it was in July of 21, we've been operating this squad with these critical care paramedics. Some of the things they do are, it's always staffed with 2 critical care. Now, when I say that, those people are certified either through ground paramedic certifications or flight paramedic certifications. They have advanced expertise. In addition to, a normal paramedic has about 60 hours of updated training they have to do in a certification cycle, and a critical care paramedic has an additional 100 hours, and it's of a higher advanced care. And so of our 9 guys, there's always 2 on it, 3 per shift, but when a guy or 2 is off or sick or acting in a different position, we have 9 additional individuals that have the same qualifications and can act up. Our goal if you understand helicopters, previously, if you wanted this advanced level of care, you needed to call the helicopter, and helicopter did provide two benefits. It was the higher level of medical care and a quicker transport time. There is a tremendous benefit to the transport time in a community like Lindon and Orem and Vineyard, just simply because we're within minutes of a hospital. So that need is not there, therefore calling a helicopter to a scene is less likely. But the need for the higher level of expertise was there, and Chief Sanderson identifying that and working with our medical control doctor, Dr. Smith, came up with this concept of the critical care squad. To basically, our doctor calls it the helicopter on wheels. It does all the things a helicopter do outside of the getting the flight, then getting them there quicker. But we can do that in our city, whereas helicopter might benefit better or more rural area for that part of it. But we provide all the same skills and abilities that these helicopter agencies do, and we're the only ones operating this critical care squad. And it went on 3,200 calls, almost 3,300 calls last year, based on how it's dispatched and some of the needs. And was, so that's 44% of the time we have these critical care paramedics on scene. Some things we do unique in Orem and that the critical paramedics do is variances. So we operate under Utah County operating guidelines. So the paramedics, EMTs, AMTs, paramedics have a county operating guideline that says this is what you can do. This is within your scope of practice. Anything not in the guideline, you're operating outside the guideline. So you have to create what we call a variance. And Orem over the years has really been proactive in doing those. When 12 lead EKG first came out, that was a variance, and then it became standard practice and made it into the normal county operating guideline. But one thing we've done with Dr. Smith is created 17 additional variances that really supersede the skills and abilities allowed by the county. They all have medical director oversight. They all require additional training, and we're always thinking of what we can do next. And we have a couple of things in the works that we're wanting to kind of bring forth and just do. But of some of them, the biggest one and one of them I'm most proud of is our rapid sequence intubation, RSI. This is a unique skill set for the critically ill patient who still has a gag reflex and the ability to breathe, but if intervention isn't done, they often, the term I use is crump, or they go downhill, and then, of course, any paramedic could then manage that airway at that point. But they're at a critical point where if an intervention could happen and you could take over that airway, then it improves their outcome. So you paralyze the airway and you sedate the patient and you take over that. And that is something that historically has only been allowed by the helicopter agencies, the flight paramedics. And we are the third department in the state to get approved. And it was more than just our doc saying doing it. It requires state oversight. And last August, we got it approved. And even since then, I've been able to do it a few times. And each call, of course, is scrutinized, and we make sure to review it. But it's just a wonderful opportunity we have to provide a service that's just not provided elsewhere. And we're kind of, again, there's 2 other departments that we're doing it, us, and then we're even receiving calls from other departments saying, hey, how did you get that, and how do you get it approved? So we're very happy about that. Some of our other medications, I'm sorry, I went a little fast, but we carry sedation meds that aren't carried elsewhere. Those 3 meds at the top, they're just big words, but those are our RSI cocktails to help knock out the airway. Beta blocker is a part of the American Heart Association, but most ambulance agencies don't carry them, and we see it there. We see that it's a paramedic level thing, and we wonder why. Well, the county doesn't allow it, so we create a variance, we do some additional training, we purchase the medication, and we apply it where needed to make a difference. 3% saline, it's just not carried by other agencies, and it really combats intracranial pressure and a head injury. So you get a child that falls out a window, we have the ability to give them something that the ER is going to give them, but we can get ahead of it by 6, 7, 8, 10 minutes. And then, of course, we carry an antibiotic for open fractures. Some of the actual...
Can I
oh,
throw in a
please, sorry
question
if I'm
here?
going too fast.
When you were doing some of these treatments, what's the decision-making process that, hey, I'm going to do it on site, or is it going on in the back of the ambulance? Is that how it goes? I mean,
Sure.
are you delaying getting them to the emergency room, or is that kind of all in a flow?
It's all in a flow, honestly. So historically, and maybe even go back 20, 25 years, it's diesel fuel is the best treatment. So it's like, we can't do anything, let's get them to the hospital. But there's delays and things that could happen. Brain tissue needs oxygen, right? So if the guy needs to breathe, but you choose just to drive fast to the hospital, well, you potentially compromise that. Well, if they're bleeding out, you potentially compromise that. So some of that goes into it. If someone needs a surgeon, that's not something, we can do necessarily. Well, we can't do, so don't get me wrong, but just driving that patient to the hospital just simply because we know he needs surgery doesn't save the patient. Making sure his airway, breathing, circulation is being taken care of while en route makes all the difference. So yeah, the load and go concept is definitely there, but we want to make sure we're maintaining good oxygenation, good ventilation, good circulation throughout the entire process. So all of it kind of goes into it, how many minutes you spend on scene and en route to the hospital and arriving to get it done. But we feel like, and we have seen that by actually being aggressively treating the patients early on, the outcomes are better because we're not ignoring or overlooking a potential major thing that we could take care of. For example, the RSI is a great example. There's just not a lot you can do for a patient that has critical airway, but they're still alert enough that they're breathing and you can't intervene. Well, you can drive fast, and if they crump, then you can take it over. But we find if you can actually intervene, and we do a checklist, and all criteria met, and this critical care paramedics make a decision to say, I'm going to take over this airway, and then they take it over, put them on the ventilator, and get them to the hospital as quick as they can, but maintain that oxygenation, ventilation, circulation, and all those life safety things we're trying to do.
Which ultimately saves brain tissue and survivability increases by a lot.
Yeah, I tell the paramedic students and our own employees, after a call, you always review and you want to say, we did everything we could, it was their time. And it really is people's time. I mean, if we could save every single person, right, then, well, we'd be amazing. But people still pass away. Even the best CPR, they still pass away. But I tell the paramedic students, I tell our new employees, you can't go home at night, tap yourself on the shoulder and say, we did everything we could, if as you're reviewing that call, there was something that just didn't follow the protocol or outline. Maybe you should do CPR and rotate CPR people every 2 minutes. That's a simple thing. Well, if someone goes 6 minutes doing CPR, you really can't say you did everything you could because that guy was fatigued and maybe not doing the best he could. And so those are small examples of us trying to apply our creed at the basic level, because really good paramedics you're not a good paramedic if you're not good at EMT level things, but we try to take care of everything from the easiest thing all the way to the most critical to really make a difference for those patients.
Are you, not a lot of experience. I had a friend mountain biking and he had a heart attack and we did CPR for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
When the helicopter came, they wrapped something around him
Yeah.
and they weren't, so when you're getting there, aren't you doing that same thing? So it's really not a guy that's sitting there for 6
Yeah,
minutes. 'Cause
nope.
You're wrapping him up and there's a
Right.
machine that's doing it.
Yep, the first the first several minutes until we can get there, we have a machine. Yeah, we have a Lucas device that starts to do that for us, and it makes a huge difference in freeing up people. The studies are still out in survivability, though. After 10 years of reviewing it, they're not poor studies. They're saying more needed, but survivability is in line with regular CPR. But yeah, so we put that machine on and it goes to town, and you'll probably notice, well, you stayed on scene, but even we would stay on scene in your home. That's a new thing from 2010 forward, where we were just loading them in and getting them right to the hospital. Well, survivability went way down with that because the quality of CPR and intervention wasn't happening in the ambulance. There's just no way you can do good CPR carrying someone up the stairs outside into the ambulance, even with those machines. And so the literature changed to stay on scene, do 20 minutes minimum, up to 45, depending on what rhythm they're in, working with the family and making certain decisions, then ultimately calling on scene. And it's made a tremendous difference in people's lives. It's been better for the families because it was a false hope. You close the ambulance door, they go to the hospital, they're going to make it, and then there's this unknown time. Now they're just a part of it, and we'll transport them anytime we get a pulse back, what we call ROSC, but for the most part, we're staying on scene and doing what they did for as long as we need to do our best to try to see if that patient's salvable. But yeah, those machines are awesome. They're one component of what we're talking about. And then some of the procedures, I'm sorry, any other questions on the medications? These are just a quick review of the procedures we've added. We already went over RSI. We carry a ventilator now. Any patient we RSI or any patient we intubate, we put a tube in their mouth, we breathe for them. You can obviously bag them with a bag valve mask. It's a basic level skill, but it's a very difficult skill, and if done correctly, it makes a big difference, but sometimes we overbag or we're not sure the amount of oxygenation. As soon as we get a critical care paramedic there, they'll put them on a ventilator, and it kind of takes care of all those things that it needs to. Finger thoracostomy, that's a surgical insertion. We're opening this hole in the chest on the side during a traumatic call where there's some buildup of blood or even a tension pneumothorax, and it's just something a helicopter agency would arrive and put a chest tube in or a finger thoracotomy, and we're able to do it on scene and get that and relieve that pressure. So to your point, we would say, get them to the hospital, they need a chest tube in the past. Well, those 4 or 5 minutes to get them to the hospital, they may expire because they didn't get the chest tube. Well, we are able to do a finger thoracotomy, which is just prior to the chest tube, and relieve that pressure. Pericardocentesis is brand new to us. That came on board, January, I believe, and it was just someone proposed it. It's a skill that the helicopter industry do. We brought in a cardiologist to teach us, to give us ins and outs, benefits of having it, and ultimately, working with our medical conductor, decided to do it, did a big training for this critical care paramedics, got everyone up to date on what they needed to do, and got the equipment. That's where you insert a needle just below the sternum to relieve pressure that's around the heart. So these are advanced level things that we would see often done at the ER after we arrived that we're hoping to do on scene and maybe minutes sooner to help preserve tissue and get these people back quicker. And then lastly, QA, most departments have some sort of quality assurance. I mean, this is everything we do to make sure we're meeting our goals and expectations. And we do a monthly quality assurance meeting with our EMS committee of 15 to 20 people. We review every call that meets certain benchmarks, all the variants I told you about, and we're constantly trying to improve. And after we review it, we take that data and put it out to the departments because we really want to be the best. And we can go home at night and say, well, yeah, we did everything we could at the best. Or we can be honest with ourselves and say, we did this, could have done that a little better. Oh, I'm glad we did that. And where can we be better and help that crew learn and then put that message out for the whole department because we really want to improve patient care outcomes and improve survivability. And just even if they don't make it, know that we did everything we could. So. And then lastly, the training facility. Yeah, I mean, there's a huge benefit to the EMS side of it. We intend to put a large EMS simulation room in there where we'd have a static lab. We currently have equipment kind of spread throughout the stations, and we do EMS training, and we would like to get to the level where we could bring a crew down and run them through kind of a static simulation lab. We do host a monthly in-service training with Timothy Hospital. We've been doing it for my whole career. And it's all on WebEx, goes out to the state, but we sponsor it with Timpanogos, and we'd like to have a facility where we bring them in, we bring in surgeons and other things to teach us some skill or review something with us for an hour. We've been doing that, and it's just been really cool to have that, and we look forward to having more of a static lab with our training facility, do some more EMS training. And that's it. You know, our goal is really to provide the best level of service we can, and we've been doing that, and we're constantly reviewing it and trying to improve it. So my goal today was just to kind of show you some of the things we're doing EMS that are kind of out ahead of maybe other departments, and we're very proud of it. So any questions for me?
No, great information that you're going to have such an incredible level of expertise. I do have a couple questions about the facilities. Council, do you have any other questions about either the sixth additional staff member they're requesting? I have a few about the facilities.
Sure.
I'll switch you guys.
Okay.
And then chime in if it's.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. So the projection is 8 million.
We won't exceed that.
How are you sure you won't exceed that? Because I know on all the boards I sit on in the county, everything is always going over budget when the bids come back. Tell me a little bit about that.
We don't have any more money than 8 million, and so I guarantee that what's been projected, what they're currently working on, it just won't exceed it. We already own the property, which is huge.
Okay, that was my next question, is if you had to do a land acquisition.
We've owned that for 20 years.
And then tell me a little bit about the operations and maintenance. So what you're describing is something that is clearly state-of-the-art, unlike what other agencies will have in arguably in the region, in the state.
Absolutely.
Is this something that you see you will invite other agencies to have training? Will they pay a fee so that there's a little bit of a revenue generation, or at least a recouping of cost to allow them to use this? Do you see anything in that nature for the operations and maintenance going forward?
Yeah, so we're currently trying to determine what those costs will look like. The benefit of the contract with Lindon is that we're trying to come up with a true cost methodology. That's what we've been currently working with Adam and our administrative team, is so that we can show you down to the detail exactly what operationally it costs across the board. Our best guess is going to be what it's gonna cost us the year moving away. Lindon's charged in the rear from actual costs, and so I think we'll have a year of data before the operating costs will actually come into effect, and that's something that we'll clearly be able to talk about. The upfront and that's even with the upfront cost of this, is as we're negotiating these things, I don't believe that the way it's currently written, there aren't any increased costs for this training facility that'll go into effect November. We'll have 6 months of its use and its operations to then try to make the best decision moving forward and applying true costs or whatever methodology, which we haven't come to the final conclusion on, that would be assessed to Lindon and Vineyard. I think the biggest thing that I want to just share is that we know that the fire service and EMS services is expensive. There's no questions about it. We see the huge value in the partnership and the relationship and the mutual benefit to all three communities. And so I'm looking forward to the next month of really diving in and coming up with what's going to work best, given that we want to maintain this relationship. I mean, I would challenge you all to explore doing your own fire department, of course, contracting with other departments, find out just exactly what those costs are. But the benefits of tonight is hopefully that in doing that research, you'll take into consideration the actual services we provide versus what you could do on your own or what you could actually contract. And then, of course, the value of that is something that we're going to support whatever decision you make in servicing your residents.
So have you already started the outlay of expenses on these training facilities?
Yeah, this is currently under construction.
And you said November, that's your targeted finish date.
We anticipate the 2 burn buildings being up and constructed and active. We don't anticipate seeing the classroom setting in that building until this time next year.
What portion will be allotted to city, you know, Lindon and Vineyard, to Lindon specifically, and how is that percentage derived?
And a follow-up question as you answer that is, did you consult with Lindon and Vineyard before this started?
Conceptually, the idea, I mean, Adam knew that we were conceptually talking about a training center. This actually is something that we started discussing in October. And honestly, because of the financial capabilities, the desire from just our internal employees to withhold rebuilding Station 1, meaning that the department, every member of the department, even the guys living at Station 1, felt that this training center was much more of a priority than rebuilding their station. It just escalated things so quickly that, you know, we didn't have discussions in regards to financing it, charging it, what that's gonna look like, which I think are very fair concerns for you guys that.
Kind of a good partnership. We talk before we do things is what I would view.
I agree, and I think that that's one of the benefits that we have moving forward, is the relationships are different now than previous administrations with Brennan, our city manager, and Adam's relationship. It's different than in the past, and I think that I'm confident that we can get to a place that you will feel the benefits of it, and we do recognize that we moved forward on a project that, whether we get you guys to support this financially or not, we still feel it's a value that we're going to do and take the burden on and try to figure out how best to incorporate you guys financially to support us. And that's something that we're gonna, over the next month, try to come up with the best way to do that, taking into
Did that get
consideration.
your question answered?
Sounds like it's a work in progress.
It really did. I mean, for us, and Chief Swenson knows, with Orem never having this, it's like the Swiss cheese, the stars aligned, whatever analogy you want to use, it just happened. And we're all just waiting for the rug to get pulled out from underneath us, truly, because it's amazing.
The Swiss cheese, I do not know that term in
Your
this
Swiss
case.
cheese lines up, you got the holes straight through it.
Okay.
I hadn't heard that
It's
one.
usually used in a negative way. When the Swiss cheese lines up, we've missed something, and then we have a catastrophe. This is just the opposite.
Chief, I have a question for you on the staffing level that's projected. Can I run back to this other slide here?
Sure.
So those numbers on each station, so is there new personnel that Orem's already approved?
No.
So this is just rotating staff. So my understanding was right now, Station 31 only has 5, is that correct? And Lindon only has 5.
That's correct.
So are those 2 personnel per shift
No, the new-
rotating from somewhere
So the new
else?
personnel currently is, this staffing model is based on Vineyard's budget approval, the 26th of this month, where they're gonna staff 6 additional people. We're gonna staff them on an engine out of Station 3, designed primarily to respond into Vineyard as their primary ALS engine until they have the facility built for us. They're currently in negotiating with a builder to build us a residential structure. The city's gonna own it. We're gonna occupy it until they actually can, in the next 3 to 5 years, build, similar to what Lindon went through. Live us in a house, they own it, build the station, we move in, they either sell the home or whatever they want as a city. So these numbers are, the only way we could ever put 6 in Lindon is if Vineyard approves their 2-person per platoon staffing model, at which at that time, we're gonna move numbers to look like that.
Yeah.
I
So
see.
we're shuffling. Orem's
Okay.
not hiring any additional personnel. This will be funded through Vineyard.
Is our public safety building big enough to host another person? I mean,
It is, it was
Added
built,
one-
it was built with that many bedrooms.
Yeah. It's actually got a 7th bedroom, if I'm not mistaken. Last year, this is, I guess, one of the things I want to recognize is the support we saw from Adam and you guys last year in going from 4 to 5. I mean, it was a $316,000 additional expense that made a huge difference for us operationally in providing the services. And I would anticipate, I mean, that would be the additional cost that we're gonna have to negotiate if Lindon, if we were to ask Lindon to pay for 6, because at the point we will be able to provide 6 until Vineyard is staffed. At that point, we would move your staffing back to 5, unless we had the additional person within our current staffing because of the value we see in 6. I understand the bind it puts or makes it look that we're gonna put it up here whether you pay for it or not, and that, how that may feel. Neither one of our cities wanna subsidize the other. That's not the intent. We truly believe that it just provides a higher level of service, and it's honestly above my pay grade to work out the financial side of it. I wanna provide the best level of service from my position down, and where we get financially is what I think Adam and Brent are gonna be perfect at in figuring out how that best services both cities.
Council, any other questions? Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here this evening.
I would echo
Jake
what,
looks like he has one.
I'd echo
Yeah.
what the mayor said. We appreciate the relationship. Mayor, myself, Van, 10 years, it's been a great relationship. We appreciate that. In that 10 years, our public safety building, I think that's an important piece of the puzzle, is our public safety building. And our approach to that is one thing I'm proud of how we approached it. We had to do it based on the contract with Orem, and frankly, I don't know that we would have done it. I'm glad we did, but our original estimates for that were very, very high, something we were really concerned with. We're able to hone that in. We're able to sell off a few assets so that we weren't having to spend as much, not having to go in debt as much, interest expenses. And that's typically how we have slowly, methodically, big decisions like that have taken that approach, and to the point that had to go into very little debt for that, and now it's free and clear, right?
It is.
Which is incredible for a brand new state-of-the-art facility, and it's not that we don't love our PD and our fire. We love you guys. I mean, we support you 1,000%. But and so it just feels. I mean, that $8 million mark is more than we paid over here, or if I'm not, mixing my numbers up. And so our knee-jerk reaction is, wow, that's a big number. And I know that we're only a part of that, but anyways, I just want to bring up that context. But and I appreciate your encouragement to look other places. I don't know that we want to look other places. We love this relationship, and it's been, I took my scouts over, and your guys over there in the fire department gave us a tour just 2-3 weeks ago. They're incredible. They're great guys. We love that relationship, but we are a very financially conservative group. And so those things, that I really think that's the only thing that would ever make us look outside this relationship is the dollars. And so maybe just a little context of where we're coming from, because this has been an outstanding relationship. It really has. Kudos to you, your 4 years there, your administration, and the previous chief before. It's never been anything but a very positive relationship.
And I agree, and I appreciate that, and I hope that my comment didn't send you down the wrong path. We do not want to lose you. We feel the exact same way. I just don't feel like I'd be doing you the service you would expect from me if I didn't support you looking because of your fiscal responsibility. Sure. I think it's wise. And then ultimately you have the decision to make on levels of service and what can and can't be provided for the price you pay. But I'm confident, without a doubt, that we can get to a spot where we can address your fiscal responsibility and your fiscal concerns while still maintaining a really healthy relationship. No question.
That would be fantastic. And I think, if I speak for the council, the sticker shock is part of what we're experiencing as well, because we just approved, like you said, 316,000 increase last year, and the amount that's the load or the lift or what's the ask for our portion, we don't expect to be subsidized either, is a very large lift in one budget year and going into the next. So this group does a great job doing their homework and diving into the numbers. I'll just let you know, maybe even more than other councils do. So they're looking at those line item by line item and trying to understand the justification and where that fits and what's the right size, right fit And I'm sure Adam's also gone through some of those things you mentioned. This is still a discussion. We really appreciate that, because there are some initial things on some of the matrices that were provided as the initial formula. There were some questions, there were some concerns, well, what about this issue or that issue, or how this tweaks one way or the other. So that sounds great that you're wanting to kind of have a very open dialogue with how those numbers are looked at and the suppositions of value. I mean, certainly we feel this multi-million-dollar facility that we built, there's a value there. You don't have to build another entire station on the north end of Orem. So hopefully that's part of the equation of how things are looked at in the operations and the part of the pie of our contribution.
It's no question through your leadership, and then Adam is the manager that, with Bren and that relationship, it's different. You're not just gonna receive a bill from Orem City that says, here's your increase, this is what you pay. Those days no longer exist. We don't want that kind of relationship, because that's not a partnership. That's just we're providing you a service and vendor, and that's unacceptable. And so I'm hoping that at least this year with Adam and moving forward, he'll start to see that difference, the trust we have in him. Hopefully we'll be able to gain trust that he may or may not have had with us in the past, because we're way more conversational and we're trying to be.
That sounds great.
Way more transparent.
And you've got competition with your Public Works also has a lot of big investment right now needed for our sewer system that we have an interlocal with you as well. So we're on board with you and a lot of people that live in Orem, we're kind of seamless in some ways as communities. We just blend right into one another. So it's a beautiful relationship. We hope that we can continue. So,
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I would like to propose a little 5-minute recess here for a minute, and we'll come back to our chairs.
I second and third.
Who's it?
But it's happening right now. But it's happening now.
Don't you? We've watched, I had a neighbor 2 doors over, pass away, so just the recent.
Hello there.
It's,
Yes, thank you for your time.
it's incredible.
We actually need to offer.
Thanks so much. Thanks for listening.
Oh, okay. You do look a little bit like your sound a lot like Van Broderick. Yeah, tell him hi if you see him. We were in high school together, we wrestled together. Okay, maybe you was, okay, we were never in the same weight class.
I remember Dad saying,
I'm wider now.
the truck would always show up.
Just Simon, our high school meeting.
So he was in that transition where he was cramming, learning EMT stuff.
Sure, right.
So, but to see that you've got EMT before.
I know, I gotta take it.
Yeah, it's
My
really
son
cool
works
the
in
way
Orem in the rec department, so we're losing Carl was.
Oh, you're very nice, thank you. Yeah. He loves being retired. He's really good at it. Where was he a
I'm trying to
firefighter
get that right myself.
Salt Lake City? Yeah, they actually still run a squad model EMT because they're ALS engines. Yeah. Yeah, so they're one of the few in the state that actually has a squad, but when I hear squad, I think paramedic, and I was interviewing a couple of EMT squads, they're going, on the squad, I go, they're going to paramedic squad, I'm like, it's not a paramedic squad, I go, it's the opposite, it's an EMT squad, because our ALS engines are slower, and they're coming, and we really just need extra hands to help go cross ambulance on anything ALS, so they'll turn the engine around, save the engine, and just do the EMT thing, but they have a unique, that's just unique to them, because they don't transport their own, they're the only entity that uses ambulance instead of, well, I should say that, Iron County just started, but at least in this. For what?
State of the art.
But yeah, how have you enjoyed your counseling, councilman?
Been 2 or 3 months.
Did you replace, because I'm neighbors with Ben Cherry.
And honestly, Chief's right. Like, if you have more questions as things come up, like,
Okay.
you should always ask why. Right? If we can't tell you why, it doesn't mean it's right, or it doesn't mean it's what you have to do. But if we can't tell you why, then you gotta go, hold on a second.
And this is your first time in doing it?
Tell me why, right?
Thought to do it?
Brand new, we finished track and I thought, okay, what do I do? I'm coming to the council.
I was like, just glad to be doing track.
It's just like, here's your bill. I'm waiting for 4 more years. No, this is just your bill. We're not gonna do that. So, that's good too.
Oh, I hope so. I'll get talking fast. No, just hope I wasn't too. Thank you. Yeah, we're just trying to like, my eyes are open. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. I can't do that. You start to learn more and more, and you're like, oh my gosh. Money goes into logo. No, just kidding. It's actually true though, right? The printing and stuff. Anytime you make it, that's why we haven't changed our different things over the years. I'm like, why don't we change it? So much goes into it, like you don't realize. Like, yeah, that's why UPS is always the brown truck. If they ever want to put like a little stripe, it probably costs their company $1 billion, right? Just because there's so much that goes, so much that goes into logos and stuff. We love it here. I love it. My son just moved from Saratoga Springs to Carlton, California. Oh, before he left. And he said to me, Carlton actually is not too bad. No, it's awesome. I've been to dance and I go back I'm like, oh yeah. They're definitely, I'm from Southern California. Or it definitely that are much worse than Saratoga. But yeah, moved out and there's so much more. Stay for a couple days. I could go back. I'll go back.
So you know this guy, huh?
I do. We spent way too much time
Planning trip.
on the mountain.
I know.
You know, as I was sitting there, I thought, he never talked this fast when we were up on track. He was just chill. They had their little contest of who had the most saves. It was a joke, and I don't even know how it worked.
If you gave a Band-Aid, save. If someone needs a little Benadryl cream, save.
And so that's why I guess. And he's really good at it.
You did a good job.
Where we're at, our fire operations, with you guys.
You got a cookie?
I know, I thought about bringing
It's hard. I don't know how deep to go, right? Because I can literally spend 8 hours we can talk about all the reasons, you know what I mean? But it's like, this is it. Questions, you know? It's like, so it's a little tricky that way. But the value of it, like, people actually don't realize.
I wasn't.
Oh, now I feel bad.
I would have liked to, but I had a conversation.
I totally forgot about that. I hope you represent the city well.
Well, I made it to the, I made it to the King's Court.
That's what I told the mayor too. I just told her, I said, if you have more questions, you've got to bring us back and you've got to ask, because we will be able to tell you why. And if we can't, then you should absolutely like freak out about it. You know? So I was just telling him that we had a conversation about the why.
Hey, we'll send you in. Van will lead us up. I don't know. I want to know how mobile I am. I'm trying because I'm a little nervous.
Thanks, Al.
I don't know if we don't have the best. I've never.
I bet. used to play a lot more than we need. We used to play together more than we used to play.
I think we still play together whenever we have certain. And I would have liked to have done the big D's, but I
feel bad I didn't put it on.
You talk about mobility, it's so hard. I gave a basketball when I got a steal, went in for not contested land, got called for a 3-second violation.
Where's the joke? I thought it was gonna be an injury. I thought it would end it that way. That's a better ending than. But I was worried about.
Sadly, this.
Oh, yeah.
I do like Jay's question.
Yeah.
Ben's got some good. Ben's always got a few.
Okay, so here's what, this is a true story with basketball, board game. You know, and my daughter, Camille, did it. And I know I'm getting older, but I'm playing as good as I know I'm probably ever good.
Back into the meeting. I'd like to call council members back in. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming this evening.
And her first words, wow, Dad. And I think, oh, yeah, she got, your face is really red. Are you okay?
you wanted to hear.
So just get down.
That's what kids do best.
All right. We'll now reconvene here. After concluding that presentation by the Orem Fire Department, we will now move on to item number 9 on the agenda. This is a public hearing to look at our
Make a
impact
motion
fee.
to open a public hearing.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Broderick to open a public hearing, seconded by Councilmember Stewart. All in favor?
Aye.
We are now in a public hearing. Thank you. And we'll like to invite our staff here to go ahead and present the new impact fee analysis.
So with me is Ridley Griggs with Hansel and Luz. We've been working with Hansel and Luz for the past year and a half, working on the master plans for sewer, water, and PI. But for today, we have Ridley talking about our impact fee analysis for water and wastewater.
Yeah, you got to get pretty close to those microphones so we can hear it, so thanks,
We
Ridley.
expect you to go through every page on that report.
So if I can be,
On every page, so.
before Ridley starts so just as an FYI here tonight, so we have the capital facilities plans for both water, drinking water, and for wastewater. And then we have the impact fee facility plan and impact fee analysis for both of those, for drinking water and for wastewater. And then associated with that is the ordinance. It's on page 39 in your staff report. So this ordinance, if it's approved, this adopts the capital facilities plans, the IFFP and IFFA for each of these, and then has listed there in red the differences in the fees that Ridley's going to outline also in his presentation. So, okay. Ridley, well, you know what? Do you want me to let you drive this? You just gotta just turn rotate the wheel.
Okay. All right, awesome. Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for your hospitality. I don't think I've ever been given a cookie before, so that was really, really nice. But like Juan said, I'm Ridley here to talk to you about impact fees for the water and wastewater systems. So just some background information I like to make sure we go over when we talk about impact fees. When we think about constructing and maintaining and operating an infrastructure system, there are broadly two pieces to that. There is a capacity side, what is the capacity of our system? And then there's an operational side, what does it take to run the system? And when we talk about impact fees, our focus is on capacity. Operations is really an entirely separate concern. So, we were just talking about fire. So, you build a new fire station, you've increased your capacity. Whereas maybe if you hire a firefighter, you've just changed the way you've operated. So, and then in a water system, for example, if you build a new storage tank to increase your storage capacity, and that's what you've accomplished. If you, replace a pump because it's worn out, you're just operating your system. So we're focusing this discussion on capacity, and specifically increasing capacity to handle growth. So, there's a cost to providing service. There's a cost to increasing your capacity, and that's sort of the impetus behind the name impact fee. Is there's that impact, right? There's a cost to providing that service, cost to building volume in your tanks, cost to installing pipes. And there's kind of an interesting cash flow problem that can occur because all that infrastructure has to be in the ground actually before the home is serviced. And so the city has to stay ahead of the game. And so the city is authorized by law to charge an impact fee that has to be proportional to the actual cost impact that the city incurs to serve that home. So one more time, just to summarize, impact fee is meant to cover the cost of increasing your capacity specifically for future growth. So hopefully that makes sense. So from time to time, cities will update their impact fees. Depending on the city, the schedule can vary a little bit. And a few reasons to do this is, number one, things get more expensive over time in the world we live in. and so you'll want to keep up with those cost changes. Sometimes there are significant updates made to land use planning. Zones get changed. And so you actually need maybe more infrastructure capacity than you thought you did. You might need more projects. And so, that can be an impetus as well. And that's what's occurred specifically in Lindon City, since the impact fees were previously updated, there's been some changes to the general plan land use. And so then we've updated the master plan and capital facilities plan. And so that's the main purpose behind why we're updating this, is just trying to keep up with costs and keep up with the changes that are going on in Lindon.
So this is all growth, so none of this will go to updating infrastructure. This is just increasing capacity.
Correct.
Yeah, impact fees can be used for only very specific purposes related to capacity. That's right.
So an example would be on one of the pipes that we just recently installed on Center Street. We were replacing an older existing pipe that, I don't remember the original size.
It was an 8-inch pipe that we replaced, but looking at the future growth, we ended up having to upsize to a 16-inch pipe.
So impact fees could pay for the difference in pipe
So you
size.
can kind of take advantage of it in.
Right, so you can add those impact fees to cover for that increase in capacity, but not for the operations or maintenance or things like that, so.
When we go rebuild the tanks that are located in 835 East, want to replace the aging infrastructure. At the same time, we're gonna say, well, we need now increase the capacity. Well, we're gonna turn it down to allow for the growth that we're
Okay, thanks.
We'll have questions on that when we get a little further along.
Okay.
And really, they've received your slides, and so, yeah,
Okay.
don't feel like you have to reread all of that if you, okay.
Yeah.
100%.
You were kidding?
Only kidding.
All right. Yeah, so in a nutshell, the process to develop an impact fee takes a few steps. First is developing a capital facilities plan, which we look toward the future. We say, okay, what is Lindon going to look like in 20 years and 40 years based on the city's planning documents, based on approved developments? Where are we going? We also look at where we are. We define that really well. What is the capacity in our system versus what is the need? And then we develop a plan to essentially bridge that gap where as land uses change, as development occurs, we install a series of capital projects to meet that need. So that's a capital facilities plan. And then from there, we develop what's called an impact fee facilities plan, and that's specific to a 10-year window, which is defined in impact fee law. We can look out that far and say, okay, what is the reasonably imminent need? 10 years is not a real long time in terms of infrastructure lifespan. So what is our reasonably imminent need in the future? And we'll define those specific facilities that are coming to support the growth in that time period. And then we look at what those cost. And then we go through a process to compute the maximum allowable impact fee. Again, there are rules involved with how we do this. The purpose is to be entirely fair to the city and fair to the developer. This true cost is the simplest way we explain it. We're trying to figure out what is the true cost to bring another home online in the infrastructure system.
True cost sounds better than maximum allowable, I will just throw out.
Okay. Well, the maximum allowable essentially is the true cost. But yeah, so that's what we're after, compute the true cost. So this figure just shows we worked with the planning department, community development department, excuse me, identified, okay, which parcels are vacant, what's the timing looking like, and then from there forecasted what's the water demand going to be, how do we move that water from the sources and the storage tanks to where it needs to go. We constructed a computer model which simulates the flow of water as it moves through the system, helped us understand, okay, where are our pipes that are a little too small, that are constricting flows and affecting pressures and fire flow capacity. And we developed a plan to most efficiently meet the demand by replacing and constructing pipes. So this figure here shows what we ultimately came up with. So Juan already mentioned some more storage capacity that's going to be needed at the 835 East Tank site. He mentioned the pipe on Center Street, and then there are some others that will be needed to essentially convey that water from the east where it's produced and where it's stored out west to where most of our growth pressure is occurring. So
we're already working on Project 3 and Project 2. That's what's being built right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question? And I'm probably backing up a little bit, but is this a process that occurs annually, or is it based on need, perceived need, or how often do we do what you're doing here?
Well, we're supposed to do an update at least at a 5-year interval.
Okay, and is this it's been 5 years since this has happened?
It's been a little over 5 years.
A little over 5, okay.
We shoot for the 5-year, but sometimes we do 6, 7.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
I thought it was if Steve elected, then go through this process in his first few months.
Yeah, one pretty much covered it. 5 years is kind of standard practice,
Okay.
although we see really fast-growing communities, like Saratoga Springs, for example, does this every year or two, just because they've got a lot going on.
Right.
So,
With that said, with the previous master plan that we had to do an in-between amendment to address Anderson Farms growth. And we had to do a little amendment to address that change in
So that would be the as
land
needed
use.
if something,
So that was
okay.
the land use change for that part, and we had to do a little amendment.
Thank you.
okay. And then on the wastewater side, on the west side of the system, we identified a few projects that will be needed as growth occurs. Pipeline projects, one which would allow the city to actually decommission a lift station, which is always great. It reduces maintenance burden on the crew. And then a couple other projects that we identified as partially existing, partially growth related. So it's a case where the pipe right now is smaller than we want it to be to perform at the level of service we design it for. So no catastrophic problems, no big backups yet, but it's gotten past that point where we like it to be. So that's going to be where, again, part of that cost is going to be related to existing performance, but then we'll make the pipe bigger for future growth. So a little bit of both in those cases. So that's the wastewater side. So in summary, when we ran through all the calculations, followed the rules, and came up with the allowable impact fee to reflect true cost, we actually found that it would be a little bit less than the existing fee. And that is pretty rare because, like I say, costs tend to go up. But actually what happened in this case is a new law that was implemented between the last impact fee analysis and this one, where the state used to have a standard level of service for all water systems. You had to provide 800 gallons per day to a home on the peak day, 400 gallons of storage. And over time, as our data got better, the state just found that to be excessive for some communities, not all. And so they implemented a new law that allowed a system to analyze their own data and come up with a reasonable requirement. And so we looked at that for Lindon and found that that was higher than necessary. And so we've actually reduced the level of service. And
Well, we're about water conservation, right?
yeah. So that's the main reason you see that actually go down. Impact fee law requires you to, if the fee goes up, there's a 90-day period before it can be implemented. If the fee goes down, it's supposed to be implemented right away because we found cause to do that. So kind of as far as implementation goes, that's what'll have to happen. So on the wastewater side of things, we did see a pretty substantial change going from $1,086 to just a little over $1,800. Part of that's due to construction inflation. There was no change in level of service on this one. And then part of it is related to new water treatment laws. So the state has implemented, there's a nitrogen and phosphorus rule. So water treatment facilities all over the state have had to make pretty substantial and expensive upgrades to remove those nutrients. And Orem being one as well. And, so Lindon has to participate in that. So there was a pretty substantial increase on the order of about 67%.
So does this take in, we talk about capacity, and so Orem are they increasing their capacity with their?
Yes.
Does this impact the costs that they are now passing on, Orem passing on to Lindon?
Yes, did you have something to
So,
say?
on the capacity, I don't know if they're increasing the capacity in Orem, but what is a new thing is not, the original treatment was a certain standard, but where they now changed to the phosphorus and nitrogen removal, I guess that part is
To
now.
meet those levels of treatment.
Right, on the treatment. But then there is also what we're going through with Orem right now, with the exercise we're doing, is renewing the infrastructure, and that's not part of the.
Okay, just want to make sure those were separate.
The capacity is, that's more of the operations part.
Yeah, so we had to dive into the city's agreements with Orem and pick apart those expenses. But yeah, I think Juan covered it. Does that answer your question?
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
So Ridley, just a quick question then on the maps that you identified and you highlighted specific plans. Is the city limited to use those funds, impact fee funds, only on those specific things that you've identified?
Generally. There's some flexibility. Again, the real limitation is it has to be related to increasing capacity to provide for growth.
Right.
So, if I show a well in one location and you want to move a well to another location, that's fine because it serves the same purpose. And, if as we study a pipeline project and we realize that maybe we can run it down a different street to save a little bit of money and accomplish the same thing, we can do that as well. So there is some flexibility allowed.
Okay.
Because, we're trying to predict the future and
Right.
and the people who wrote the law understand that we can't nail it every time, but we usually can get
So
pretty
just for
close.
clarification, so as you mentioned, like Saratoga Springs, where they're growing so rapidly and they're adding thousands of new units every year. And so if we go through some significant changes, we therefore have to update our capital facilities plan and then update these impact fee studies to reflect and be able to utilize those funds. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to support the impact fee with solid technical data, so.
So if we're clarifying then too, I know like TSSD that services, American Fork and many of those cities, they're having a huge increase.
Yeah.
So increase, that would be on the operations maintenance side, that would come across to the users in the fee that they pay monthly.
Yes.
So it's treated there to cover those expenses versus capacity is, like you said, we have these two buckets of growth or change or need or updating cost of running things. Okay.
Yeah. So what I have here is a table with a lot of numbers, and I don't like putting this many numbers on a slide. It's, tends to distract or overwhelm people, so we'll just try and stay a little bit bigger picture here.
Well, I noticed why Lehigh wasn't on there. Or I wondered.
Lehigh,
It's part of the TSSC.
so this is drinking water right here.
This is the drinking water.
So Lehigh, I hesitate to speak because I'm
It's
not
okay.
100% sure, but my understanding is they actually don't employ impact fees. They just have the land developers construct projects and get credits. I may be not 100% accurate, but I could not find an impact fee for Lehigh. So I was able to find some for most. But sorry, do you have a question?
I'm just looking at Provo, at 4,000, and you're saying these impact fees can only cover what's needed. Wow, why do they get so much money?
They are in the process of building a water treatment facility, kind of like the one that Central Utah built there at the top of Orem.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that's what that
Yeah.
price reflects.
Every community is different. So, one question I always get is, well, how do we compare to others around us? And it's useful to see, but every community is also so different that, you know, if you look at Provo specifically, they don't have a PI system. So people are watering their lawns with drinking water, and so their level of service is actually gonna be quite a bit bigger, you know. Whereas the Lindon drinking water system only needs to provide a few hundred gallons per day for indoor use. They've got a plan to just deliver a lot more water. Their pipes need to be bigger, so.
Really significant changes in population sizes of their infrastructure, the amount of tanks or pipes or treatment facilities that they have. And so we do this frequently. We look at other entities as, hey, what's our neighbors charging? But I think some of our more seasoned elected officials, you guys have heard me say these are apples to oranges comparisons. And so don't get too caught up with what they charge, because they've done studies that says this is what you should be charging, and based on their own infrastructure. It would be like me saying the cost to replace the transmission in my Hyundai should be the same as the cost to replace the transmission in somebody's 16-wheeler. Well, it's not, and they're two different animals, even though it's the same process. And
So the other question is, you said this is, you know, maximum allowable by some organization. Who is that, and how are they making sure that we're adhering to that?
So this is written into the Utah Impact Fees Act. So it spells out all the little details, and the language essentially states that it has to be, you know, the impact fee has to be proportional and related to the true cost. And so when you talk about who enforces it or what the safeguards are, and probably, you know, one of the requirements is that we do have to publish these studies, right? So we have to go through our process and demonstrate how we did it, you know, provide the supporting data. You know, one of the checks against it is, you know, the Home Builders Association.
And they're there?
Yeah, so they do a good job of making sure we don't get carried away. And, you know, there are avenues in the law to challenge if there's ever a disagreement. Preferably, if there's a disagreement, we like to work through that on the front end. That's a lot better than litigation.
So do we have a significant liability in making sure that this is within reason as a city, or?
Well, my stamp's on the report, so a lot of that's gonna fall to me. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't wanna say.
I've got
a lot
your
more
name
than
in
that.
I mean, I
Ridley
imagine us
Griggs.
being on the
Ridley
lower end,
Griggs.
we're probably about,
Yeah.
you know, you look at some of these higher, I mean, $10,000 on an impact fee, that's significant.
If we were to be found to be excessive, and when he says the minimum amount, it really is, the law is only going to let us do this much, and that's why he uses it. It's not because, hey, that's what we want to get up to, it's what's necessary. But there have been cases, some of our sister cities just to the north, went through litigation, and their fees were found to be excessive, and they had to come up with millions of dollars to repay and interest and whatnot. So we do a very good job of making sure we have really good data and making sure that we follow that. So there's no body per se that's regulating it, but we regulate ourselves. We work with the homeowners association, and they let us know if they're home builders. Thank you. So there is a good process.
And hey, one of our fees is going down. How often do you get to have that
Take
bragging
that
right?
back to the committee.
My goodness.
Yeah, so like I say, there's a lot of numbers, but if we focus on a few just trends in this chart, I compiled the impact fees for as many cities in Utah County as I could find. They aren't always gonna look exactly like this if you find them online. I've included a little disclaimer at the bottom, because again, in trying to come up with apples to apples, sometimes I've adjusted it based on differing assumptions in, you know, how big the yard is, how much grass is gonna be irrigated. But this is my best faith attempt to provide a comparison, and they've been ordered. On the top we have the lower costs, and on the bottom we have the higher costs, and Lindon is toward the lower end for several reasons. Like I stated, the level of service is able to be smaller because there is separate PI. You know, a lot of these communities have a pretty sizable PI system impact fee. I mean, Saratoga Springs, you know, almost $8,000 because they're trying to make the desert grow, you know. Whereas Lindon was able to get a PI system in and finance it through grants and other means. And so So no impact fee at all charged for any irrigation. The other factor that plays into it is when there's excess capacity remaining, development is allowed to buy into that system or that capacity at cost. And so, you know, Lindon has been building a drinking water system for a long time. They built a lot of capacity into it. And then when the PI system was installed, suddenly that freed up a lot of drinking water capacity that can then be bought into. So it'd be like if I could come and sell you a car at 1970s prices, right? But in Lindon, people are able to buy into pipes at 1970s prices, essentially. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, that's water and PI, or no PI for Lindon in this case. But so if we move to sewer, I've done a similar thing, ordered on the top the lower costs, on the bottom the higher costs. I've separated it out into collection and treatment in cases where I was able to find it. Sometimes it was just a combined number. And once again, and for similar reasons, Lindon is on the lower end. So you'll notice a lot on the higher end are member agencies for TSSD, and TSSD has an impact fee of almost $5,000 per unit. So, yeah. So, talking about recommendations, again, we have computed the maximum allowable fee according to law. We typically recommend that cities go ahead and adopt that because that is what we've identified as the true cost to development. If you were to adopt less, it would just mean that you'd have to make up that balance another way. So, and some cities do that for various reasons. If they want to be, you know, we'll see it, for example, some communities will offer an impact fee waiver as an incentive for affordable housing. You know, that can be done. Things like that can be done, but typically we just try to go with what the law allows because it's designed to be fair to all parties. So, and that's what I have. So, other questions?
Good data and a lot of great information. Thank you for teaching us, teaching me.
Yeah, great presentation for those that need to learn.
Been doing this so
Yeah.
long, I remember when Deanne used to come. Deanne Hewish. Yes, I know.
Well, I have to say, I'm, again, pleased and proud that our property tax, our impact fees are in the bottom lowest in the entire county. So it speaks well to those that have really served this community well long before we were here. And those that are here now who are really doing such a great job. Juan, thank you. And Ridley, thank you to properly forecast and really plan for the future. So we'll hopefully hand off as well to those that are coming after us.
We love proactive.
Yes.
It's awesome. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing, so we need to
All
take any
right.
public comment.
Any,
Well, I was gonna ask questions on the tanks on 835.
Yes.
On page 100, city personnel have indicated that the smaller $500,000 tank is reaching the end of its service life. How did we determine that? Is it just age? Are we getting leaking?
So before I got here, I think Brad Jorgensen actually found out quite a few leaks, that the lid was not properly seated on the tank. We did a patch. I don't know when that tank was built, but we are needing extra capacity, right? Right next to that, one of the tanks, the round tank on the north, there is another older tank that was decommissioned that was just a square tank. And that's just buried there in the hillside.
So is it capacity more than the tank itself failing or reaching the end of its service life?
It's not necessarily failing, it's just that we need the additional
the
capacity.
capacity.
And rather than trying to build a tank somewhere else, we have the room there to decommission the older, smaller tank, because the one tank to the south was built later on. So we actually start with a little one, then we build another round one, and then we build the 1 million gallon tank, and now it's removing those two in the same area where we already have transmission lines, way to fill it up. we have the booster station, so it makes more sense for the needed capacity just to replace an older infrastructure.
So it's the capacity is the driving force for that there.
So I moved into a house that backs up to those tanks in 1993, and they were already there. So that's 30 years. So I don't know, maybe Adam knows when they were built.
They're not failing, they are
Yeah.
well maintained. We inspect them, send scuba divers, we clean them, we check. There's some rebar that is showing in some places. That gap was, I think, was the cause of the boil order back in the
We
day.
think it probably was with, yeah.
That was fun.
It's one of those things that is more driven by capacity, and that one I think was in the 5 to 10 year window.
All right, this is a public hearing, so anyone else here in the audience is welcome to ask a question as well.
I've done this a few times.
I just have some comments.
Please.
All right, please do, Dion.
As you come up, we love what the Utah Valley Home Builders Association
you.
does.
I'm Eileen Miller. I'm with the Utah Valley Home Builders Association. I'm a government affairs. I'm the one that tracks your impact fees. I actually have the numbers for Lehigh here. I share this. Before I get started, I just wanted to say one thing. I did take the opportunity to tell your city administrator over an email this week when he gave me a heads up about all this. I have two of your very finest people that sit on my government affairs board. And they are the highest integrity, and I thank the city administrator for hiring such great quality employees, Michael Florence and Bryce McConkey. They just don't come any better. And they are very, very interactive in the group. I have 67 people who sit on that board, all the way from former ombudsmans, attorneys, large builders like D.R. Horton. We have a huge cross-section, and we have probably about half of the city building officials from Utah County that attend. So it's a really great place for synergizing information and bouncing things off of one another. And if there's problems that come up, everybody gets to say. And it's very civil, and it's just great. Because most of the time, especially with inspectors, they'll be on the opposite side of the builders. But it's just a great situation, and I appreciate that so very much. So I just wanted to add to what was already said, that a couple of years ago, because we were having difficulty with wanting to know where all of the money went from impact fees, some of the cities were actually audited and were found to be using impact fees to cover other things in their budget. And so these are the kinds of things that we kind of delve into. And when that was found, now the state auditor does, they have to make a report every year, every city does, and they have to show where those fees are going so that they're spent within the building department. There's kind of a war right now for inspectors, and there's a bidding war, basically. And I tell all of the young people that ask me what should I do when I graduate from college, I said, become a building inspector. I mean, take those classes, because it will be a great job to have. The other item that we've just had a legislative session. I served as the state Senate recorder for 20 years. So I was there when they created the impact fee section of the code, and there when we created the Ombudsman's office, and that was in '95, and then in '97. And it was interesting because cities were having a difficult time coming up with funding for infrastructure. And there had to be a solution. And of course, new construction is the one that is putting the impact on the infrastructure. So we are totally 100% aware of that. But this last legislative session, and as you know, it's nearly impossible for a young person, a young family to get into even a rental. It is totally out of control. And we understand that, as he mentioned, the cost of the construction has gone up exponentially. There's just nothing you can do about the cost of materials and labor. But on the back end, it just only adds to the problem. So my job is to make sure that the impact fees are as low as possible, because I consider myself a consumer advocate with the job that I do, because my job, if a builder goes out and takes out a loan, they have to add on to the cost of that loan the impact fees. And so whatever the impact fees are, make a piece of property for development either attractive or not attractive. And so they go to a lending institution, and those fees are included in the cost of that structure, the new development of that parcel. So the builder basically is compelled to pass the cost of those impact fees on to the buyer. And that is why you can't afford anything. You've got super high interest rates. And I visited your sister city not too long ago, and some of their new candidates, most of them have 6 children. And I said, well, we passed the ADU law so that you can have one of your married children and their children living in your basement or in an internal or an external ADU. Where are the other 5 married children with their children going to live? I mean, it's a big problem. So this affordable housing push that we've had from the state is what is our biggest problem right now. I mean, the builder's still making his measure of profit. It's not gone up, but the cost to the end buyer has gone up, and it is just crazy. So to end on a good, I went over the numbers. I was so happy to see that the one went down. That is so rare. Thanks to you guys. They have a really good firm. I look at their work all the time. But one of my recommendations, and I don't know if this will go to legislation for the next year or not, and the engineering firms will love this, but one of the biggest problems that we have with the impact fees is when a city waits for a long time to get another study done, and by that time, you've got 5 to 7 years of increases, and all of a sudden, it's bam on that new piece of construction. So if wishes were fishes, my wish would be mandatory upgrades to all of your engineering costs every single year. And maybe you could cut a deal with the engineering firms to do those updates, because they have to be done by a third party. But we have one city who knows exactly where they're at all times. And I really wish that every city was like that. It helps the builders, it helps the people who lend them money. I mean, it just helps everybody. And they have an in-house person that does it, and of course it has to be certified by an external source. But I think they have discovered that hiring that one person that keeps track of that in real time is actually cheaper and better management of their city and resources than to do those big jumps where you put on a huge impact fee that is huge all at once. So anyway, that's my spiel tonight, and I congratulate him. That was a wonderful thing to have it go down. I just never see that. So I appreciate your time, and thank you for the great relationship that Lindon has with the Home Builders Association. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, seeing,
I'm going
Go
to
ahead.
suggest that some corrections are made to it.
I do as well.
3.
Maybe you have seen one that I've seen.
On who the current city council members are. How you get the,
Exactly.
who their names are on it, that it
It's
would be the
dated
current.
January 2024, but it lists the 3 council members from the previous year. I don't know if that's taking into account the study was occurring during their tenure, or this should be reflecting the current council members since January 2024. It's on page.
Well, if we're going to adopt it, I think it ought to be the current I want your name
Page
up
60.
there.
61?
What if I don't
61.
want my name on it?
Page 61.
He doesn't want it.
I saw that, but I thought it was just because they deserve some credit, but
That's gonna cost a lot of money to make that change. No, that's an easy
impact
fix.
fees are going up.
I'll get my pen and.
All right, any other comments? If seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you.
I
Do we have-
second it.
Okay, Councilmember Broderick has motioned and seconded by Councilmember Jacob. All in favor to close the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're now back to you, council, to review this ordinance item legislatively. Any further discussion, review?
I feel good about the numbers and the report, and I appreciate the input that we just received. Thank you.
I think that philosophically, impact fees have an effect on where builders eventually decide to build. It can. And so I love, like Mayor said, seeing us on the bottom of that list. And I do think Lindon is a great place to build. So I'm ready whenever anyone else is.
I move to approve.
Sorry, really quick, just as an FYI, so impact fees can't take effect for 90 days, and so
Except
this
for
will
the
be.
decrease.
Is that accurate? Can the
That's what he
decrease
said
take
in
away?
the
Ridley presented,
presentation.
that's instantaneous.
Well, we'll have to talk with Brian on how we codify that.
Make
then,
sure
if
we
that's-
follow the law.
Yeah, if that's different, in a different document than this, because the way this is written right now is this isn't effective for 90 days, so. I'll talk to Brian offline on that, but there were a couple other little tweaks that we found in other section of the ordinance that it referenced the old study, and so we have to go back. Our intent was to go back within that 90 days and just update some other sections of the impact fee ordinance, so before these became effective, but, so just as an FYI, okay.
Adam, what we can do there is we can
Can-
simply state, because that is the law.
Read
that
them
is-
all. Read them
That by
all.
adopting, passing this resolution, that the
indicated.
decrease will be effective immediately, but the increase and the other changes will take effect on the
That makes
90-day,
Okay.
within the 90 days. That's not a problem.
All right, I move to approve ordinance 2024-5-0 with amendments as indicated.
I have a motion by Councilmember Stewart, seconded by Councilmember Jacobs. Any further discussion? All right, we'll call a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We have a new plan and amended code. So thank you very much for your deep work on that, Ridley. Really appreciate that. And Juan as well. We're very blessed, certainly. Okay.
Thanks, Maggie, for being an advocate.
All right, so we're now on to item number 10. This is the budget discussion for us to review. We are in budget season here. We're not adopting anything as yet, but we'll have our finance director, Kristen Colson-Aaron, here to present to us some of the different areas of the budget this evening.
Yes. Budget season. And like Mayor said, we're not acting on anything, but you guys are definitely giving us direction. Okay. And I apologize, whenever I talk, I want to cough.
Do you want a cough drop?
I just had a cough drop.
Okay.
It's just my lungs, so the cough drop doesn't really get to my lungs. So, excuse me. So just to review, we've made changes to the tentative budget, and we're preparing for the proposed budget, which will be coming here in 3 weeks on May 6th. We've met with the department heads and made changes to some of the original requests. A lot of the original requests are still in here, so it's still a work in progress. And we're still looking at the economy. In this draft, the sales tax, which is a big revenue, I have it holding steady from our originally budgeted number for 2024, and then carrying forward to 2025. And I think actually I can increase that. I think we're seeing some growth in sales tax revenue. So, so that's on the horizon. And the economy is showing to, you know, to be slowing, but still resilient. So Adam and I were talking today that sales tax was, sometimes it goes up and down each month. And so we had like one of our highest months that we've had, but then the next month went low, and it was, you know, and we're like saying how, you know, when we're at 6 million, it's like, that's still a really great number for sales tax for Lindon. So, and so, yeah, we're over 6 million a year in sales tax revenue. And so that's still a good number, because yeah, just not too long ago, it was like 4 million, yay. So, okay, so then just looking at all of the citywide revenues in this draft of the budget. So this is taking out like use of fund balance or transfers into a fund. So just looking at the revenues, $27.8 million citywide with utility charges and charges for services and sales tax being the biggest chunks of that. And so let me know if you have any questions, because I sent the slides out Saturday, so if you've had a chance to review them, and I don't want to spend too much time on these if you're like, okay, yep, I've seen it, let's go. But I also don't want to blow past it and you're like, wait, I had a question. So, so here's our expenditures by object. Again, taking out appropriating to fund balance and transfers out. And so that leaves personnel at 9.4 million, operations at 13 million, and capital projects at 11.4 million. And then looking at personnel expenditures, so we use the average annual increase for the CPI from March of 23 to February of 24. So that's the annual change, is like looking at the change from March 22 to March 23, and then April 22 to April 23, and then so looking at all of those and then averaging that out. And so the average was 3.6%, and so that's what is in the budget for personnel costs. And that would be effective July 6, 2024, which is the first pay period of the new fiscal year. And just looking at how that, so this chart was added. It wasn't included in what I sent out on Saturday, but it's just looking at some other indicators, other CPIs, and what Social Security recommended. So it kind of varies. Social Security was conservative with 3.2, but then you have the Mountain CPI 4.5%. And so this is actually in the handouts that we did at the budget kickoff meeting. And so I quickly added it in tonight, and so it still says to be determined for Lindon, but like I said in this previous slide, what we are proposing is 3.6%.
Okay, we always use the CPI as one of the factors. We look at fund balance and
Yes.
lots of other things.
Yep.
I would like you, as I've done a little bit of research, for what non-government employee wages and benefits do. Some of the things I've seen in 2023, and there's millions of sites, and I'm never going to say that all their data is accurate, as I look at what happens to our public. And some of the things I've seen, that they've seen a 0.9% increase in wages and a 0.7% So I want that to be a factor as well, to we look at, I don't want us to become an undue burden on our citizens who aren't getting 3.6 plus other things that we'll talk about as well. So I want that to be, if you can gather that type of information and include, I think that's helpful as different components that we look at before a decision is made.
So Van, just so I understand correctly, you said you found references of that in
Just
those
Google
increases.
look.
Oh, okay.
And that's a hard number to find, and that's why I threw the caveat on that.
Yeah.
There's gonna be a lot of information. It was non-government employees wage increase for 2023.
Yeah.
For Utah, if you have, you know, that's, so I'm not saying what I have is going to be, I would like information on that as
Okay.
well.
Yeah. We've got some resources that we can pull from and bring some of that to you. So one of the challenges that we've run into, though, in the private sector, comparing the government sector to the private sector, you're leaving out bonuses, you're leaving out pay raises that they may receive and other opportunities, commissions or things like that. And so becomes a challenge to say just an apples to apples
Really
comparison.
another component is all, because there is no one great
Right.
thing
And that's
to determine that.
part of why I had asked Kristen to throw in this additional slide, if you can go back to that on just looking at these other government indexes. And so as where these are studies that are showing actual inflation based on these proven methodologies. And so.
And another thing that we look at also to make sure that we're not carried away is how we're able to compete at keeping employees and in a competitive wage. So that's one thing that we look at. Jason and Adam are working on a study right now. So, and we revisit it like every year or two just to make sure that it's staying competitive. Are there any other questions on this part? So another thing with personnel is the merit increase. That's moving up one step on the pay scale, and that's conditioned on the employee evaluations. It would be effective January 4th, and you usually just come back after or around when the audit's finishing up, when we have a better idea of how the first 6 months of the fiscal year has gone. And we'll come back to City Council and make sure that it's still in line with your, we'll put it in the budget, and then if you want, and then again, come back and say, do you want to implement that in December for January? And so the cost of the COLA and merit increases is $390,000. And then you can see how it's broken out between the different funds. And then in addition, there's also insurance premiums. The medical insurance is increasing 6.5%, or almost $72,000. And then we actually have it going out to market, the medical as well, correct? They just don't anticipate anyone being able to beat that, and a little bid hesitant if they do. We've had that happen before, where where somebody else will come in and underbid, and then the next year hike it way up. And so,
And we're not anxious to bounce around to different medical providers for our employees. That's
Thank you.
Not exciting. I was gonna use a different term that wouldn't be good
So
here.
one question I have about medical. Some of the organizations that I've been talking with, government entities, cities and others, they're changing, instead of having like what's considered a Cadillac medical package where, everything's covered, Cadillac benefits. They're going to that same provider and maybe doing a less coverage or policy, but they give them a nice HSA account that they can use for out-of-pocket expenses, and it brings down the premiums significantly, but they do have some,
Is this kind of a hybrid of the two things?
yeah,
We currently offer.
Both the
both-
traditional and the high deductible with the HSA.
yes.
And it's
And what
about a
you're saying, Carolyn, is
50-50
a combined-
split for who chooses that. Those that are on the health insurance, which isn't a huge number. I mean, 50-ish, that might even be high. So it's not a ton of employees that are on the health plan. We do have an opt-out where they can, if they have a spouse or somebody that's on another plan, they can opt out. But yeah, it's split about 50-50 on who
That are
is.
doing the HSA option versus full coverage
Correct.
option.
And so those that choose the higher, the traditional plan actually pay an additional amount versus those
contribute.
those that are in the HSA would receive a contribution from the city versus paying. And so is that,
Yes,
It's
and
simplified,
it's the same
but-
dollar amount per employee. So the employee gets to choose how they want to spend their benefit allowance. Do they want to spend it and then some out of their paycheck to have the traditional plan? Or do they want to spend it on a high deductible plan and then have the city put a little
Cash
bit
health
into?
savings account.
Yeah,
it is not a huge amount on the HSA. I mean, it's
like $30
yeah,
a month,
30 to
I
50
think.
bucks a month.
Yeah.
It is not significant. And so other entities require different levels of participation, and so that's all over the map. But so we do have an HSA though option if an employee
Okay.
chooses to do that,
So
and
they
it
can
is
pick one or
a
the
lesser.
other.
Yeah, it is cheaper.
Okay.
It's a cheaper
It's
premium.
cheaper premium.
So there's some changes in retirement this year with the legislation. And so they're, in evaluating their plans, they were able to lower some of the employer costs, but then they were needing to increase some costs on the employee side for Tier 2. And so so Tier 1 rates are decreasing. Tier 2, the employer side is decreasing, the employee side is increasing. For non-police, it's 0.7% increase, and for police, the increase is 2.14%. And so citywide, it's an overall decrease to the cost for the city. Even with the city covering the increase for police on the employee side. On the employee side, increase for non-police personnel, the legislation actually said that the city couldn't be the direct payer of that. So it's different from police. So non-police, the employee would be required to pay for it, but there's a lot of entities that are wanting to cover that on behalf of the employee. And so looking at different ways to do that, whether it's a 0.7% raise or a one-time payout for the year. So that's something
That's a
that
new.
Figure out the best way you wanted to do that.
Well, this one-time payout option is something that's just come up here as an idea in the last couple of weeks. And so since we last talked about this, we've discussed with a few cities, primarily Salt Lake County, interestingly, that may be looking at just a one-time lump sum at the beginning of the year that equates to the equivalent of that 0.7 increase and paying that up front to those Tier 2 employees. What that would do is, the way the law is written right now, if the city were to cover that cost, we increase their wages. I think I mentioned this last time. Technically, that creates then two pay scales. So we have Tier 2 employee pay scales and then another pay scale for the rest of the city. And there's some complications. And so doing the lump sum is treated like a bonus essentially, and we don't have to track it in the same way. They'd still be on the same pay scales, and there's some benefits to that, so.
Unintended consequences sometimes with
Yeah, it's a bit
other
messy.
people dictating things.
So we're still looking at some options, and we'll be talking with URS to try to come up with the best methodology based on your feedback to that. Yes, we want to cover that for the employees from our last discussion, so.
All right, anything else on retirement? We just have some minor personnel changes, promoting a police corporal to a sergeant. So adding another sergeant, but without adding another person. And then adding a front desk, a part-time front desk clerk at the community center.
Sorry, and just one quick follow-up, going back to this retirement issue. Jake, I failed to get back with you on the last meeting we had. There was some discussion about, were these actual numbers or were these in thousands or something? Those were actual numbers, and so it's a really small amount that we ended up with, and sorry I didn't follow up with you on that, so.
All right, and then going on to capital expenditures. So in the general fund, capital expenditures, there's $360,000 for parking lot repairs. And you can see that it's at the City Hall and the Public Works Building and the Vet Hall. And I have the Public Works Building listed under the general fund. That's where it would come out, but there would be some cost sharing with the waters and sewer and stormwater funds. Excuse me.
And these are estimates. We haven't gone out to bid with this, and so these could change a little bit, but.
And yeah, and if the estimates come in, then we can look at, well, which are more needed, and which can be postponed, but would it be practical postponing it because costs will just continue to go up. And then there's, for park improvements, $420,000. And the first one is a UORG project. If the 50% grant is approved, it's $335,000.
What is the UORG? I didn't.
It's the Utah Office of Outdoor Recreation Grant. I think that's what that is.
Correct.
So.
And I don't know what the project is. That's what.
This was Hillside Park, which is, it's probably 10 or 12 acres that we own up above the horse transfer station, and we have it in our park master plan for some trails and benches, some drinking fountains and things up there. And this is a project that he brought it up in the budget kickoff pretty quickly. I know that was a lot to digest in that meeting, so. If the grant isn't approved, then yeah, we're very, very unlikely to move forward with anything there, so. I believe this also included the pickleball court up above the horse transfer station that was identified in our master plan.
And we had talked about, Chief had mentioned also that area's not, people go up there at night sometimes, and so having some improvements could put more eyes and make it a little bit safer area too, so.
The retaining wall, what's the purpose of that?
So there's an existing retaining wall it's not very noticeable. It's behind the vet hall up against the hillside there, and it's some old railroad ties, and they're rotting, and it's starting to slough off, and so this is replacement of all of that retainage.
We've got the salt spreader and then other smaller things.
Is that replacing salt spreaders or adding new ones?
It's replacing ones, yeah, it's replacing 2 salt spreaders.
Any questions on general fund? Then going on to dedicated or restricted funds, the road fund and the park tax fund. There's $3.4 million for road improvements and $220,000 for concrete work and shade at Pheasant Brook Park, coming out of the park tax there.
And the majority of that road funding is all Center Street this next year, so.
All right, and then going on to the water fund, almost $2 million, with 1.5 of that being for the new well.
The one we don't have a place to put it yet?
Right, and that's, part of that would be finding a place, getting.
Well, we know
property.
where we want
We
it.
have property, but we haven't landed on a decision yet, so.
Oh, so this
So this
isn't
is-
the one on
this-
Lakeview?
No, this is a redundant well that we think we can locate either here in the city center park or over at the community center.
Towards well 3 is where we have the better aquifer. Lower drawdown, example, the well by Cheryl Tomlinson, we're pumping about 800 gallons a minute, it's only dropping about 6 feet. Where the one here in the horse arena, we are pulling about 1,200 gallons a minute and it drops about 40 to 50 feet when we turn it on. So we're looking at the better aquifer up there towards well 3.
So we would need another one lower as well then eventually.
Eventually.
Future growth.
All right, let's keep
Okay.
moving.
And so then there's secondary and culinary water improvements. And you can see the list there. I don't know if you have any questions on the water fund, capital expenditures. And then sewers, 1.5 million. And you can see, so Lakeview's showing up on both water and sewer. Getting stuff done there. And then sewer also includes Gilman Lane and other improvements. Any questions on sewer?
Does the cost on, like that, for Lakeview Drive sewer line replacements, does that also put the blacktop back on? I mean, it replaces the pipes and repairs the road?
So that is the goal for kind of what we're doing on Canal Drive. Fix the infrastructure and then
Right.
work into our road map or
Okay.
road plan to rebuild Lakeview.
Right, and going on to stormwater, 1.4 million, 900,000 for the main ditch piping, and that would be offset by a grant. And then prioritizing other stormwater projects that are shown as deficiencies in the master plan.
Kristen, it seems like traditionally we've had the utility increase percentage in a slide. I didn't see that in either the packet or here. What's our proposed utility rate increases?
So for water, it's 3%, for sewer, it's 7%, and for stormwater, it's 2%. Did I remember that correctly?
Sound right?
Yeah, you're correct, Jake. Sorry, we left that
Yeah,
out this year.
I do apologize.
It is 3% on the base for water and 5% on the usage.
Did we, with this budget, transfer any sales tax revenue similar to what we did last year in this proposed budget?
Not in the proposed budget, but we do have 1.3 million, and that will be presented as a budget amendment for the current year to transfer to sewer to help with the Orem FOSS.
Tertiary treatment that already got built.
Yeah, so we owe them 1.3 million, and we don't have that much in our sewer fund to be able to cover that. So our intent is, and what's built into this budget that you're seeing tonight is transferring general fund monies to help cover that, and then we would pay ourselves back over time.
That's
And
on
so
the-
that's on wastewater sewer.
That's on 23-24 budget?
Yes, it will be, yeah.
On a budget amendment for 23-24?
May 6th, yes.
So for this next year, though, before you suggest any dollar amount, let's look at our fund balance and see where we're at. And that, I'm a little bit hesitant to say, let's subsidize utilities when we're below 20% on our fund balance.
It's a number that's remarkably low for us.
Still fantastic, so.
I said for us.
Yeah, but for us, yeah, I don't,
One thing that I did, so instead of, we're not transferring money to the from the general fund to water or sewer, but we're also not transferring water or sewer funds to the general fund again this year.
Yeah, thank you.
In '25.
So we typically every year have those transfers that we would cover our administrative type of costs, and we didn't do that last year. We're not proposing to do that again this year. So,
Question one, on did we ever figure out the grant for
The
piping the
DWQ,
main ditch?
yeah, is that back on, the DWQ grant?
Yeah, so they forced us to not use it on piping, but where we have, the other project, west of Geneva Road, we'll use as much as we can of that 750,000 into that part, but then we had some of that money scheduled to be spent over there, so we're just gonna flip-flop the money, put that grant towards the west side of Geneva Road, and then use our funds to pipe the sections of the main.
Okay, great.
Whenever all this happens, we need to take the dollar figure to our hollow water shares meeting. Let them see what the city's paid to help their lives.
Yeah, we had our annual shareholders meeting, well, you were there.
Yeah.
And we actually took them out, says they wanted us to pay for every improvement, so we actually took them, says, well, see, you haven't spent any money here. So they were very eager now to make those repairs, and they're very thankful that we're being, really transparent of what we're trying to make their.
And again, kudos to Juan for changing the tone of those meetings over the last decade.
Great. All right, let's keep it going then.
Okay,
Keep it
so
rolling.
going on to the recreation fund, 985,000. 615,000 in the aquatic center and 370,000 in the community center. And then you can see those improvements there with the parking lot again for the community center.
Seems like a lot to me. I don't know if we want to discuss it now or discuss it later. I have several items I want to discuss. That's one for me that I think philosophically as a council, we need to decide what we're doing with that building. It's 100 years old. It's, the community center, we bought it for 600,000. We've never put that much money into it as I look at previous years, 60, 70 here and there. It's a pretty significant amount. I know at one point there were some talks about potentially the school district buying that. I know that's completely off the table at this point. That's a lot of money to throw into a 100-year-old building.
That has seismic issues.
That has seismic issues. It serves us well, no doubt. I would guarantee my family spends more time in that building than anyone. But man, that feels like a lot of money. The parking lot improvements, maybe expound on that a little bit. Just redoing the parking lot.
Can I snag your mouse? Yeah, this is a parking lot around the entire thing. So on the south side is the worst. And
Yeah, it's a mess.
It's
pretty,
maybe hard to visualize,
yeah,
but
the asphalt's pretty gone.
And so again, these are estimates. We haven't bid this out. So you can see all the spider web cracking there that's occurred on the existing. It's just in rough shape, and where we've got chunks coming out of it. And so those become trip hazards or liability issues. And so it's a matter of how long do we want to let that go. And so on the south side, it's in worse shape than the north. But on the north, just a couple years ago, we had to fill, there's just some big, huge monster cracks. You can see the size of some of that fill that has gone in. So on this current year, we are redoing this section of spider webbed, this roadway here on 60 North. And we asked to get a bid on this section of the parking lot, and it was too high. And so we're gonna bid this out again and see. I would love your input on this. I've already, the next item right below it, he says a shade structure. They've talked about maybe putting some little shade structures or one big kind of shade structure out in this patio. That's one that I mentioned to him is probably not a priority and not likely that I would recommend that. And so
The
This-
parking lot include this back kind of
It
road?
does, yeah, and so it's a little bit hard to see. Oh, there's a good street view, but these cracks were really wide, and I mean, a few of them were about that wide, and so this is just filled with mastic kind of tar,
Yeah.
and so you step on it and it's spongy. It's worked for the time being, but
But that has been done back-to-back years, because still we fill them, the sinks, and so we fill them multiple times.
Yeah, and I would want to look to see what it costs to do what we've been doing again. Those are two, the shade item and the parking lot, those are big.
they are, yeah. So, but it's really, this is the side that's in
With
the
that
worst
back
shape.
road too, I mean, how often are we really using that,
Down here?
this back road that goes,
Oh, this.
that's what I was saying.
Oh, I thought you meant this section.
Is that
Yeah, that's-
included in?
This is pool season, because all of these are pool
Sure,
parking.
had to park there a time or two.
So, yeah, I'm sure that little thing is included, but again, that's our estimate, so.
Yeah.
It looks no different than the road right next to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That all gets,
It's on the list.
that's all get milled this year.
Yeah, no, amazing.
So that was something we brought up in our budget kickoff, is what is the long-term vision for this building in, let's see, this north part, the brown roof section, essentially, almost to about right there. That part was built in 1949. And so, there's been upgrades, and when we first took over the church, we leased it out to, it was Mazer, actually.
Mazer Academy.
And so they used it for, I think, 2 years. And then we got a CDBG grant to put in the elevator and remodel the kitchen and this whole north end. That was probably the biggest influx of cash. I think that was probably $250,000 to $300,000 that we put into the building then. And then we've done multiple things over the years, a new roof on parts of it, and so, yeah, another thing, I mean, on this list is redoing some of the upstairs senior center. In that upper area, there's a stair step that has to go up to actually access, I think it's 3 of the classrooms, and so they have a ramp in there that they're looking at. Those are discretionary issues, and so the parking lot, we can make that work for a few more years, but
Yeah, it's just hard. It's hard to know what we're gonna do with that. You know what I mean?
yeah, I don't know that we need to make any decision, but I would certainly, I would go so far as to say if we didn't have the community center, I think our citizens are well-served by it.
Oh,
And-
Yeah, I
and that
can't
would be-
imagine not having it.
There would be a
Question
void.
of, do we rebuild something
Yeah,
there
is it a
someday? Do
long-term
we
Yeah.
keep-
solution though?
Yeah.
And then are we throwing good money after bad because, yeah.
The
Anyways.
future of the Lindon Elementary site is certainly
It's
interesting.
all tied in there.
It is.
It is. And
Yeah.
so,
We almost have to wait a few years just to see what
Yeah, I know
happens
that-
there.
Those of us that have been on the council, we usually look at this each year, and we kind of, okay, what are the minimum, kind of patch it along? I guess we do that
Because
with the
we've never
Veterans
figured
Hall
out what a
too.
good plan is.
Yeah.
That's not just very staggering
Yeah.
dollar cost wise.
There's some communities that have made it work longer than this building. I think this still has 10 or 20 years, maybe not 20, but 10. I think we could get 10 out of it. But we're gonna continue to put in 50 to 100 every year on stuff. And so,
So with a 10-year lifespan and it's a guess, I'm not anxious to put in $300,000 for a new parking lot and a shade structure.
okay, that's great. That's what we needed to hear tonight, so,
I'm one voice.
yeah.
Can they get a grant, like a CBDG grant on that ramp for upstairs from MAG?
Maybe on the ramp, yeah,
I think we should
don't think
apply
they
to
could
MAG
on
for
the
that.
parking lot, yeah.
yeah. And how much use is that upstairs getting? Do you know?
It's periodic. I mean, I'm not over there enough to probably give you a good guess.
Sure. Okay.
Should we scratch those this year? I gave Heath a heads up that several of these were likely to come out, whether or not you said
I
anything
think
tonight.
the shade structure concept too was right now that patio doesn't get utilized, and if there was shade structure, then events could be out there because it gets really hot. Or some of the groups that rent space there, like Holy Cow and the other markets, would
I'd like
use
to
that
see us
space. Yeah.
Start using the boiler again in the basement? Isn't
It
it like
is
100?
in use.
It is in use.
That is how the building is heated.
Is it really?
Oh, yeah,
And
that's what that, the last thing is on.
Boiler has broken down about 5 times this year, and so we've probably put in 20 grand on the
Got
boiler
20
this year.
grand in here in this budget.
Yeah, we had a leak a year or two ago on the kitchen up over by the gym. We had to redo the roof up there. All the cabinets got pretty warped. It came through the ceiling. So there's a lot of challenges, and so.
Well, perhaps the message I'm hearing is that we value this community center for the citizens of Lindon, but with some of the things that may be happening with the school district this next ballot year, and we could be the same district or new districts, we don't know. And this property is already on the district's list across the street for potential closure. And if the land became available, that could change the game. We maybe want to keep our options open, and is that fair to say? And then maybe continue to keep the building going so we can use it and enjoy it, but maybe some of these more significant investments hold off just a little bit till we have a little bit better idea
Okay,
of what can happen with this whole quadrant, right?
Sounds right.
So the elementary school has a lot of the same issues that the community center
correct.
has seismically, where we already own the property that the community center's on. I don't know, is there thoughts of just raising that and building there since we already own the property?
We don't know.
Everything's on the table.
So,
Okay.
so Lindon City will have,
Information we don't know yet.
from what I understand, if that, I've been advocating for that school to stay open. That's what I've been fighting for. But if something happens with that property, Lindon City has the first option on the property. So if that day were to ever come, I think those are, that the whole quadrant is going to be probably a comprehensive look there, right, between the school.
Lindon also owns the 3 houses right there.
Correct,
that
and those are
property.
dilapidated, but earning a little revenue, but
Correct,
there's
but-
future public use there as well. So this whole zone, there could be a lot of cool things down the road, maybe future elected officials and residents would want. So I think I agree with council members. We've been kind of doing this patch theory now for a period of time, and I feel a little bit bad for Heath and the employees there to have to be housed in the building that we're kind of trying to, and they've done a great job making it improved and as nice as they can with, using good stewardship there, so.
So the message for next year specifically, keep patching where we need it, but no significant investments.
So
So
the parking
the
lot
ramp,
and the
parking
shade
lot,
structure.
shade, and then I gotta double check with Alex's list, because I think he might have had something in there, but.
But
I think
maybe
he
we'll be
had the
doing
new
something
holding
big
tank
someday.
and system,
with all
or
of it,
steam
you know.
valves.
Rebuild.
Yeah, I don't see we get away from that one. The 20 for the
Oh, right.
holding tank and steam valves.
Yep. We
And I hope, 50,000 for the ADA ramps and carpeting, if it's a couple of classrooms that we use occasionally, I think we look at the use and see if those things make sense.
Yeah.
And possibly apply for CDBG grant.
See if it qualifies.
Sorry to derail. Keep
No,
going.
that's what we need to hear.
This is for.
Yeah.
I know, I've got a couple others, but let's jump through.
All right, so then, I need to lean forward. If you want to go to the next slide for the fund balances. So I know those numbers are really small and hard to see. But that would have us ending at 20.7% of budgeted revenues for our ending fund balance in the general fund. this is a work in progress, and like I mentioned earlier, just looking at like a 2% increase in sales tax for this year and for next fiscal year actually brought that up to 25%. And then once we can make some other adjustments, like taking out, as we discussed, these community center improvements that are in the budget. Those funds come from the general fund, and so that can increase the general fund as well.
Can you get the sales tax to go up by 10%, please?
I know. Okay. And, you know, and I don't have a feel for how well the new dealership will do that's going to open. So that could be,
Significant.
yeah. Because, yeah, we do have another dealership that is our number one sales tax generator over a big box. So, you know, we'll come back with the proposed budget in 3 weeks, and then our final budget on June 3rd. And so, Jake, it's your turn.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you. Such a great job. Let me just go through my notes. CapEx on the community center, we've already discussed. Increases on utilities, I think we discussed that. If we could get that
Yeah, let me.
emailed out in the next couple days, that'd be helpful.
This is actually what we presented in the budget kickoff. Is
Thank
that the
you.
right one? Yep. And that hasn't changed since then? Is that?
Did I hear you say that a base increase was going to be, you're recommending
The
a
usage, I thought the usage rate was at the 5%
for
for water.
water? Okay, I did not get that.
But it was minimal on the few.
So water base is 3%,
Yeah, let me get, I think,
and
if I
usage,
recall, is 3 on the base, 5% on the usage.
okay, because I did 3 on both.
Okay, we have some work to do.
Send that out to us, that's helpful. Anything we can always do to help. And I get that those are enterprise funds and we try to keep those neutral. Appreciate all the work there. I did love what we did last year. I loved, I tried to shout that from the rooftops. I think it was unique. I think people appreciated it because there's raising costs all over. Inflation's tough on everyone. Sales tax transfer offset utilities, we did discuss that. There was a water project, I think we discussed that as well. Animal control has doubled in price over the last 3-4 years. I'll talk to Chief about that one. I don't know.
It's not something we have a lot of control over.
Our local
It's-
agreement with
yes.
Nucas, right? North Utah County Animal Shelter. Seems
And it
expensive.
Depends on the number of animals too, and so.
Yeah.
I've actually,
I imagine that's being evenly spread through all of the North Utah County cities. It's not specific to
Yes.
us.
yeah, so if they have a rate change, it impacts everybody that are members, but there was an article the mayor forwarded to me here recently, and some others that I've looked at, just on KSL, it was just 2 or 3 days ago, an article about shelters being at capacity. They're seeing results from people that all adopted animals during COVID, and now nobody wants them. And so there's this influx of animals at shelters, and they're all maxed out and looking for additional help. And so that could be part of cost increases, but it could just be inflationary as well, so.
Contribution to Miss Pleasant Grove of $2,000. I know that was when Mayor Acerson's daughter was Miss Pleasant Grove. That's gone into place. Maybe something to think about future years. I don't know that that's our place to be donating to Miss Pleasant Grove, but there are Lindon residents that are invited and participate. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Steve, what do you have to think about that?
Well, what he just said about having Lindon residents there, it's just, I don't know what Pleasant Grove donates. Be
It's much,
interesting.
much more, they've told me.
Yeah, so
Our percentage is very tiny, but yeah.
Yeah.
What do they use the money for?
Uh,
to offset the cost, I think, of the pageant.
Just like our
Yeah.
little Miss Lindon, there's a cost to operate
It's quite
the
a
program.
pageant too. My daughter was in it once. It was quite impressive.
And, then they go and represent.
Yeah.
They come to the ribbon cuttings and different things like that.
I look at it similar to our Chamber of Commerce, the Pleasant Grove Lindon Chamber of Commerce. We're named in there.
Right.
They pay 20,000, we pay 10,000.
Right.
It is a lesser, but as Miss Pleasant Grove goes out there and represents, she's representing Pleasant Grove.
So you want to ask for a code
No,
name?
not something I'm gonna. No, something to consider.
Waiting cost based on how many Lindon girls
Whenever a
make it into the
Lindon
the
girl
royalty.
wins, which I think
Right.
is pretty regular.
There
I
you go.
think.
Make it a post.
Isn't Terry Marchbanks in charge of it? She'd kill me if we.
To be. She's long out of it.
Okay, more of my notes. 20.7 fund ending balance seems really low for us. I think Van mentioned the same thing. That seems lower than in years past.
Did you say that goes to 25 with the adjustments we've made? And with
Not counting the
That's a
recreation,
scenario
but
where
just
sales
with the
tax
sales
goes
tax,
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, with that 2% more, she thinks that goes to 25, and then if we pull out some of those capital improvements at the community center, that number will tweak in a good way.
Yeah, low for us, keep that in mind.
Low
Yeah,
for
it's-
us, still great, but
just
a number
a
that
few
we've
years
usually
ago.
What's been the main reason
Yeah.
for that over time? I mean, we're just new to it, and I know that our numbers used to be quite up there. So what's
So it's probably been 5 or 6 years ago, the state actually they capped it at 25%. And so you couldn't go more than 25. So now they changed that up to 35, and we've bumped into that 35 a couple of years.
If you get a project you budgeted that doesn't happen and it has to get pushed, you can get.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on capital expenditures, depends on projects, it depends on your sales tax revenues. I mean, we're less than we were in a prior year, but we're still higher
Healthy.
than we ever have been in every other year. And
it's a
so-
healthy number?
As
Yeah,
we've been out and about, I know Mayor, I've heard her say several times myself as well, especially during lower economy times, that, hey, we've got a full reserve. We're bumped up against that limit. And as we've been out campaigning, we've told people that. And so I'd love to stay as close as we can. And I get that at some point it becomes difficult to do your job properly when, those several years where we went over a hair and got written up by it. But 20.7 just seemed low compared to, we're definitely not bumping up against the limit. But as our budget grows, it's probably a high dollar amount as maybe we've ever had. 20% of this budget compared to 35% of the budget 5-6 years ago may be the same number. And if we were trying to do that.
And in the last couple of years, you guys have been very generous with the road fund. So you've actually put an additional extra $1 million in the road fund from the general fund. So
No, I agree. And so you say, what's happened? Well, we've spent more money. That's what's happened. And that's not a bad thing. We've invested in our roads. Absolutely. We've invested in infrastructure and in our employees, and that's a good thing. If there were, the waterfall, to redo the waterfall for 100,000, that's one that stuck out to me. I thought, God, that seems like a lot. I hate that waterfall. I know my wife hates it, tries to go around without getting her hair wet. But I don't know. That's one that's just like, I don't think we're going to be lacking for pool patrons this year at all. I think we're going to be over the top. And so to spend 100,000, the waterfall is a cool feature, but if we were looking for items to take away, that's one that would make my list. Last is the conversation that it seems like we have year over year raises, employee pay. It's an exponential cost. Lincoln, you've probably heard my spiel. Steve, this is probably your first time. I struggle with the exponential cost of wages and the burden that it can place on the taxpayers, our budget. And I've always said, man, anything over 6% really feels like a lot. Know that this comes from someone who I had to give several employees a 0% raise this year. And that's hard. That's hard in an inflationary period like this. I understand inflation is hard. It's hard on a lot of families. It's hard on a lot of our tax-paying families in Lindon. And I would say the grand majority are not receiving a CPI, are not receiving hey, inflation's higher, we're going to give you a raise based on that inflation. It's all merit-based. It's a meritocracy out there. except for within the government, and not only in the government, but the school district. And so I have a hard time with any, I think in years past, when it's been a lot more than 6, we've said, wow, 6 really feels like the limit. I know the proposal this year is 6.2, and so we're maybe splitting hairs, but I always have felt like I have a hard time facing my constituents saying, yes, we gave X amount of raises this year. And it just seems like a lot. I appreciate the creativity we've done in years past. I do understand that inflation's tough. It is. I struggle that our merit really a merit? We give 99, 98, 97% each year. I look at, where I work, the industry I worked, this year, people got between 0 and 3%, and even great performers, good employees, got 0% in some cases. I mean, it was really a tough year in banking in general, but extremely biased towards the banking industry, and I certainly recognize that. So, I've said that probably 3 or 4 years in the past that I'd love to see us cap it at 6%. I feel that way still, and so to see it go over that 6% still feels like a lot for me. So that's where I'm at.
It's interesting. I've been sitting on the Budget and Audit Committee for Mountain Land Association of Governments, and one of the things that we've talked about, and I think Adam's brought this up as well, and Kristen's mentioned that too, is how do you retain your top talent? How do you attract new talent when you have openings and positions? And they were also expressing the same situation where a lot of people now, current generation, looking for jobs, they really look at the dollar figure on the salary and what's their take home, and not so much with the long range mindset of pension and the 401k and the insurance, Cadillac insurance and all those things. So a lot of the discussion has been, please help us keep wage competitive, because that front end wage is the shiny penny. And so we talked about, and they went to, some cities we do wage analysis to make sure that we're, being fair and hitting everyone in that mid-range. Adam and staff, Kristen, everyone does a fantastic job on that, so we're not lagging anywhere. I would suggest, if council is saying, gosh, those COLA merit feels a lot, some of these other organizations might look at those other benefit, because it's a total compensation package. You have to look at the TCP, total compensation of all those other, things that are going into the wage cost. So I feel like I would love to support, Adam's work too. I think the merit is really incredible tool to help people, meet expectations and exceed expectations and have opportunity to have that growth, and for managers to have those conversations about how they can improve, or kudos or whatever they might deserve. Maybe we look at the increase in the insurance and just, having employees maybe start to support that in some fashion. That's some of those other things that maybe aren't the front end wage that everyone's got their eye on. So I don't know if you're feeling like you need to.
Well, that's not exciting
Shave
for
off.
existing employees that are already there.
Well, they'll get if they get the wage increase. I don't know, something to consider. But I think one of the things that we do pride ourselves on here in Lindon is, staff does an incredible job bringing in lots of grants. I know we've talked about that. And, in the private sector, if you win a big sale, you get acclamation, but you also help the organization, you help the bottom line. I see all those things as also helping the bottom line of Lindon City, how staff goes and gets millions of dollars in grants and looks at efficiencies and saving, their operations. So want to make it a win-win all around, for sure. So.
Just as a reminder on this chart that we presented in the budget kickoff on that far right column, so for the last 17 years, our average, if you go clear to the bottom right, our average COLA has been 1.8% out of all of those years. And then this is the average of the other actual indexes. So we've been below inflation in the last 17 years. And so just a reminder.
All right. Well, Kristen, anything else for us this evening?
I don't have anything else.
Thank you. Any further questions? Council, so much great information, lots to digest. So we can continue to have those questions to send over to Adam and Kristen, and they're happy to fill us in as we deliberate. If you could please remind us the timeline to adopt some of these.
So I'll come back May 6th with the proposed budget, and then June 3rd with the final budget.
All right, so if council, so you're going to come with a proposal May 6th. So if council has further discussion or questions about some of these things, do you want
talk to me
we need feedback
beforehand?
prior
Yeah,
to May
yeah,
6th. So we're
definitely,
not
yeah.
switching things up
Right.
on May 6th.
Yep.
Okay. Anything to add,
So with
Adam?
that, I would encourage you to send out these final tweaks and adjustments
Okay.
with some time for us to go through them. And always understand maybe a weekend is
Right.
more difficult. A Saturday afternoon, hard to respond on a Monday.
Right.
Okay.
It's hard. You know, I look at the 200 for the striping, or for the new parking lot, and the waterfall. If we were to take, it's hard because it's a drop in the bucket. If we were to take that 300,000 and put it into utilities to tell the residents, hey, we get it, because I hear that complaint more than anything. My utility rate nonstop goes up, and I get it because inflation, because, you know, and that's not our fault. I just love being able to tell the residents, hey, Lindon is in such a great spot from a sales tax revenue because of the smart decisions by staff and councils past, that we're trying to help there. Like, I feel so much better about the widows who live in my ward and saying, yeah, we're trying so hard to help you, rather than, but hey, don't worry, you got a waterfall that breaks every 5 years. 100,000 went to that. I just have you know, the fiduciary responsibility weighs on me. And so, I don't know, that's my plea, is if we can find a way to offset these, and I recognize that 300,000 is probably a drop in the bucket. It might save $1.
Probably not that much even. So.
Yeah, it's tough. Something to think about.
Well,
Would it also be helpful, are some of those things proposed coming out of the park tax fund? Any of those?
there's already money coming from the park tax fund to cover the improvements. So I put in like covering half of the costs, the capital improvements for the
Recreation.
for
Community center and
the
pool.
community center and the pool.
So just for those that might watch this at a later point, park tax monies have to be spent on those
On facilities.
facilities,
For
right?
parks, art, recreation, and culture.
Right. So, a little bit different bucket than the general fund.
Correct.
Okay. All right, very good. Thank you so much. All right, we're on to our last item for the evening. This is item number 11, discussing our grand marshal contenders that we might want to. Good evening. Thank you so much, Juan.
Thanks, Juan.
We had talked once upon a time, I thought like 2 years ago, this is what we want to do in our 100-year. I can't remember if it was veterans, which we've kind of done back in whatever that one is.
2004.
Something with the 100-year, the.
Kristen.
I was thinking the same thing as, it's the centennial, we almost need to have something really, someone or a group that's really iconic.
And as I've been thinking about that, that's all I've come up with. Something cool and iconic, but I don't.
Do we have anybody who's 100 years old?
I was looking at a magazine where it's in Pleasant Grove, what the Pleasant Grove Register, whatever that magazine, sorry, somebody had cussed me, newspaper. And they were talking about somebody that turned 100, that was from Lindon, but hadn't lived in Lindon for a long, long time. And sometimes I don't know how a 100-year-old would respond to the rigors of, I don't know. The people over 80 or to be in the parade, maybe we have different responsibilities. I mean, I guess it's not that demanding, but.
Do you get family whose parents were here and they can tell the stories that their parents told?
Well, the grand marshals have the duty to show up to a lot of the events, and they're, so.
Figurehead to be seen,
Yes.
to be there. And
So it is a pretty busy week.
But we have new people for maybe new ideas.
Yeah.
I shared my idea.
I was in the history of Lindon, they used to have an annual Old Folks Day, like what you're mentioning.
Many communities have done the old folks sociable.
Yeah.
And it's a big, big deal.
Yeah.
They eventually start dying out, but almost exclusive. That was a bad pun.
Wow, wow, wow.
Wow. Those celebrations.
The events start to die out.
Yes.
The people do too.
Yes,
but
because of that.
Did we have a short list somewhere?
Heath had one.
He had one recommendation.
Well,
Yeah.
any
Donnie
flashes
Marie?
of brilliance?
Yes, if we can get them, I would do it in a heartbeat.
Kevin Bacon just makes the.
Yeah, have Kevin Bacon just kind of
There you go.
rotate back here. Although I don't think he has any ties, but
Doesn't Christofferson have some ties to Lindon? D. Todd Christofferson?
that's what I've heard, yeah.
Let's get him. Put him in a float. I don't know. I'm fresh out. I know Lincoln's pretty connected to those group of brethren.
Well, on our list, I was noticing, I think we're gonna be asking, I know for the float, we'll have veterans in the parade. I think we had talked about, I wish Heath were here, maybe even having all the former council, well, obviously the former council members, mayors in the parade that we can gather up. We've talked about Little Miss Lindon, people maybe that have represented in that capacity, having
Has
some sort of acknowledgement.
Mayor Ellertson never done it?
I thought he was on there.
He's
there he
in
is.
2005.
You had to go deep.
Yeah, and we see some previous mayors have,
Do you want to, what if you did all the previous mayors? Ellertson, Collimore,
Dane.
Acerson.
They've all done it before.
They have all done it, but it's the 100th. I don't know.
What's been the criteria? What are you looking for?
someone who's had some sort of significant service in the community, someone who's
Well-known service.
someone who's had sort of contributions in some fashion.
Made our community better.
Yeah.
Glenn and Chris Mitchell keep coming to my mind.
Oh, that'd be great. Did they not do it once?
No.
Glenn Mitchell?
No. He's
they'd be
always,
great.
he's
in all of them.
patriotic, he's got he volunteers for our,
He's on our Board of Adjustments. Was on our Board of Adjustments.
So here's an idea.
Okay.
Glenn Mitchell.
He's a very nice guy. Yeah, they only meet like every 2 years,
I know.
and so.
Yeah, he is fantastic. So the Iron Cowboy completed a Guinness World Record last year of doing over 100 triathlons.
is he from Lindon?
Yeah, they live in
Couple,
Lindon.
couple years ago, I think.
Sunny and,
Yeah, it's been a couple years now.
I mean, they did, this Guinness World Record of over 100 triathlons. I don't know if that is a connection there, 100
How about our
centennial.
puzzle maker?
I don't think he would want attention on himself at this point.
Let's do him and the pals together. I don't know. It's hard. I mean, there's so many great people. Are you wanting to do something outside of a one one person, one couple, like we've done in the past?
I mean, you can see 2004 we did, where we did the,
It does say that he was raised in Lindon and Pleasant Grove, but I couldn't see where.
Who's that?
that.
Elder Christofferson.
Oh,
Seems like it needs to be a resident, though.
Yeah, I
That's
don't know if we
my
could get him to
opinion.
come down here to the daily activities.
Yeah, you'd probably get a maybe for one.
oh, yeah, that's right. It's more than just the parade, huh?
I mean, the one that Heath suggested is a great suggestion, for sure. Just trying to decide if that's a 100-year.
What was his suggestion?
She was here, recognized tonight. Were you here?
Kenneth.
Not all here. Okay,
Yeah, it's kind of a significant year, right? So it's
Yeah,
a little,
just
you.
So
wanna-
I was thinking, before we were talking about it was gonna be like a group of people. Was feeling like the,
You have any thoughts, Adam? I know a lot of people-
everybody that's lived over here 40 years or more. I don't know how you determine how many floats you need for that, or if we have
Okay,
any
who
idea of
would-
knowing how to do that.
Was it Boyd Walker that stood up at the Dowdle unveiling that he's the longest living resident?
That was Cullimore.
Well, he was the
He was the one that was
mayor,
lived
but
here the
Boyd,
longest.
Boyd was the longest living resident.
he's one that I've thought about as well. I know his wife's passed away.
Yes.
Well, I think Scott was the last one standing because he got to 65 years, and Scott was the last one that was here, standing.
Was it Scott or
thought Boyd
Boyd? I
won.
thought it was Boyd. Well, they were close. He's in his, what, 80s, 90s? Born and raised, homegrown. Maybe it's a group, if we acknowledge some of those old folks that are born and raised and they're now, senior citizens, if it's too much of a physical and lift to come to every day and everything, we have a group of those that are reaching 100, I don't know, in the community. What are your thoughts, guys?
I like Steve's suggestion of Glenn Mitchell. He's my favorite. But I'm fine to do a group. I don't have super strong feelings either way. I think there's so many great people in Lindon that you can't go wrong. I don't hate the idea of all the former mayors, even though they've all already done it. This is the 100 year. We're bringing them all back. They're all grand marshals. And that's 3 couples. And they're all wonderful couples.
4, wasn't it?
Is there, oh, Dane as well.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking that. I don't hate that. You may have them tell you no. Daryl Magleby. Love Daryl. Maybe too recent of a council member.
I think all the previous council members that just completed and retired would all be contenders in any given year. Well, okay, we need to finish up the meeting, so are we trying to give Heath a 100% answer right now, or are we,
We can take another shot in 2 weeks, but he needs to know pretty
he'll
soon.
need to
so
know, and then
he
we'll
can
need to
start
get it lined up,
preparing.
because these people have to be asked, and they have to
And I have
have
no
their schedule
opposition
open.
to any of them we've discussed.
That's
by
what's
any
so
You're
hard
not
about this
helping,
one. It's like
guys.
good, great, or great, or
great.
or really, really great.
Yeah.
It's, I think if we want to, if we want to make a splash, if we want to do something unique, bring all the mayors back. If we want to have it be at like any other year, I love the Glenn Mitchell pick. And maybe leave that up. Who's over our centennial?
Cole.
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 Let Cole do it.
Big responsibility. Okay, all right, well, that was our last discussion item.
Motion
So
to
I'll
adjourn.
bring it up next time, is that,
Yeah,
okay,
okay,
all right.
we have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Stewart, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Thanks,
great,
guys.
thank you so much.
I told my wife between 8:30 and 10.
Well, that's
Pretty good. Pretty wide berth there.
I said this was gonna be a long one. taking away my. I do it on purpose.